And we're live.
Yeah, hi, good morning. It's Kelvin MacKenzie here. Unsurprisingly, I am absolutely furious this morning. And I congratulate, and it doesn't happen very often, I congratulate The Sun for probably the best piece of journalism I've seen from them in a while. So they clearly, the way The Sun works is that actually you don't have to do anything. The reporters are your readers. Now, when I ran the glorious establishment, we had 12 million of them. We couldn't get out of the way of the scandals. Anybody who was shagging anybody who was nicking money from anybody, any government minister that was trying some kind of sleight of hand, boom, phone goes. Actually, the reader tells you what is actually happening. And the same has happened to The Sun this morning. They have an absolutely shocking story involving migrants. So there's a place called, I think it's called Stoke Heath, which is just about 10 miles south of Stoke-on-Trent, which in itself, by the way, is to my mind, I congratulate people who live there because it's a very tough environment, Stoke-on-Trent, which is, I think, made up of 5 towns. There isn't really a place called Stoke-on-Trent. Anyway, what happens is, look, I tell you what, Pooch, have you got a picture that you can show the viewers? Right, look at those houses there. Would you like to live in a house like that?
Yes, I would.
Actually, all right. And I've just been joined by Mike Graham, having flogged himself to death for 3 hours. Good morning, Mike.
Very good morning to you. It's a great story, this, isn't it?
Yeah, right. So you look at that picture, which has now disappeared, as I have, which is probably an advantage. But so that should have been social housing. There were 83 of them built, and in that area, it's basically a very countrified area, right? Suddenly are going to come people from another world, another continent anyway, and all claiming to be asylum seekers, all claiming that they've had a terrible life, and just in case we want to track back anything that they say as possibly being untrue, they've thrown their passports and their phones away so that there's no way of telling whether actually what they're saying has any validity. But look, let's just deal with the issue. You've been born in the area, you're within, say, 10, 15 miles of the area. These 83 houses come up. Let's be honest about them. These are lovely houses. We'd all like to live in them, right? Instead of that, they go to migrants. So some of the locals have given their interviews. As you might expect, they're outraged. I remember one lady had 3 teenagers, and actually, this would have been manna from heaven for them. After all, it's been paid for us by us. Actually, some of this money would have definitely come from neighbours in the area, people who pay good council tax money to have these places developed. And what's happened? Gone to people from Somalia, Eritrea, Iraq, whole loads of places, but nothing whatsoever to do with Stoke-on-Trent, nothing to do with Birmingham, nothing to do with Oswestry, nothing to do with anything local. The priorities in this country are completely wrong. Okay, so Shropshire Council say, and I wonder whether I might be able to quote it, it's Shropshire Council effectively say, we've raised the issue. Hold on one second, what did they actually say? Right, Shropshire Council has written to Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. Right, that's how annoyed the building owners are about this story, right? They are so aggravated, they have set off an alarm so that the nation...
migrant alarm.
Burnham alert.
It's burning down alert. Right, listen to this. Shropshire Council has written to Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood to raise our strong concerns about this location and are awaiting a response before considering any action. Do you honestly tell me, by the way, they're lying their chumps off there, because what they're indicating is that they didn't know anything about it. This could not have happened without Shropshire Council being alerted to the fact that these homes had suddenly been dedicated to people from another nation, another continent, right? So to try and pretend, so they're giving themselves time saying, oh, we didn't know anything about it. We didn't know anything about it. They knew everything about it. Well, how do you think it all worked? That suddenly someday, right, houses that were being built for social housing, suddenly they were told, oh no, it's not going to social housing. They called up in advance and saying, help us out, will you? We're under a lot of political pressure. For God's sake, give us some social housing. Have you got any? You got any? So Shropshire Council are not to be believed in this manner. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll make myself available. Actually, we tried to contact a councillor in the area, but he's only taking messages. Why doesn't a councillor come on and either defend it and say it's perfectly all right, we're being very liberal about this, and by the way, the local people, they can get in the back of a long queue, we don't give a stuff. People at the front of that queue, they come from somewhere else. So, please, come on and explain to us. So this is what, now you've got to calm down about this, but this is what the Home Office said, this government is restoring order to the system by making record. Right, it's the same old tosh all the time. There is no justification for taking fantastic social, newly built houses and giving them to people who have literally defied every rule in order to wash up on our doorstep and say, give us a house, give us work, give us your passport, and actually go ahead of any queue of local people. How can that be right? It's not right, and something has to change. But honestly, does it matter? When you have a majority like this, and the reason there's a majority like this is because of the Conservatives. None of this would have happened if we hadn't had Boris and then Rishi and the whole lot. The whole collapso meant that ordinary people, and in a funny way I understand it, simply had nowhere else to go. They ended up with this dork, and now they've got another dork, and we've got people who feel it is appropriate to give massively new housing in the middle of the countryside, not to the people it was intended for, not the people who actually in part paid for it, but to give it to folk who came from a long way away, claiming various stories about their background. I honestly feel very, very, very upset. The quality of that housing, people in our country would kill for a new social housing estate like this. Surely it can't be right. But who speaks for us? This is the problem. Reform have got virtually no MPs. They've got, they've got 7 or something like that. Later on at 11 o'clock, we got, a bloke, I imagine, more incandescent than me, but fortunately he's younger than me, so he doesn't have to take as many blood pressure tablets. Rupert Lowe, I'm sure he'll have a view. But just as important as a view is your view. So I would be grateful if you would just send me some mail which says either you're in favour of it, because honestly, I'd like to hear the view from the left about why they think this is appropriate, because then I can tear it apart. But I can't tear it apart unless I see it spelt out. But I think importantly is we should ask somebody who has got the beating heart of the country, which is Mike Graham, whose audience numbers are really off the dial when you consider it's basically been a standing start. Mike, morning.
Yeah, morning. Incredible story. And the other question is, what happens in the future? You know, because these people, and I've been covering these stories for many years, right? And I used to get people ringing into me on talk who would say, "Oh, a family just moved in across the street, obviously migrants, and a van's just pulled up, and out comes a new fridge, out comes a new washer dryer, out comes a new television. Yeah. They get all of this stuff given to them for free. Yeah. Who's paying the electricity bill? You know, are they working at any point? Are they paying for any of it at any point? No. So everything's paid for. So it's not just about the house. It's the electricity bill. You know, it's the water bill. Everything that you and I have to find money for, they don't have to find money for, right? And I happened to be driving down near my neighbourhood the other day, and I saw a sign. They've put signs up all the way down Deptford, towards Deptford High Street. Lewisham, Borough of Sanctuary, right? And apparently that means that Lewisham is the first borough in Britain, which is a borough of sanctuary, which is a welcoming place for refugees, and it's asking you if you'd like to be a refugee host, if you'd like to sublet your spare room to a refugee. What the hell is going on? You know, I can barely afford to run a flat in London these days because it's so expensive.
Right, yeah.
You know, the council tax is up the the
correct.
wazoo. You know, the water bill's gone mad.
Yeah.
You know, the rent has tripled since I moved in 2008.
Yeah.
You know, and meanwhile, these are people going, oh, why don't you bring some more refugees in? And, you know, we'll help you out with some loans.
That's a very interesting point about Lewisham, because actually this conforms with what Mahmood said the other day, which didn't get much of a Guernsey, really, to be honest, in which what she said was that we are going to allow asylum seekers into the country if they have a sponsor.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to have all the lot that wash up at Dover and come in the trucks and all the rest of it. But if you are the London Borough of Lewisham, you might say we are prepared to sponsor, say, 20 families. And we'll put them up in council housing and we'll do all those things.
With public money.
Yeah, with public money. Yeah. We're going to do this, and this. We end up with universities do the same. Charities do the same. Plus every single, and there'll be a whole load of new charities start up, which then start saying, we are basically, they'll call themselves sponsor, right? And they will then bring in a whole load themselves. So each time a family turn up, taking your point, the fridge is, the this is, the that is. And the other thing about this particular estate, it's in the middle of bloody nowhere, right? Or in the middle of nowhere, my apologies. It's in the middle of nowhere. And actually, it's 83, well, there are 83 families, so we'll say for the sake of argument, it's probably 3 or 4 or whatever, I don't know. A couple of hundred people wandering around. Doing nothing.
You're doing what?
Doing what all day? Right. And anyway, so how do local people feel when they see basically total outsiders? It's equivalent to us going into the middle of India or Pakistan and wandering around wearing a 3-piece or 2-piece suit and a shirt and tie, and everyone say, "That's a funny mob there. What are they doing?"
Give us a free house. Right? You imagine, you wouldn't get it anywhere. I mean, you said this to me a couple of weeks ago. There is no country in the world where you arrive illegally and they give you a house and here's some benefits. Here's a washing machine. That doesn't happen, does it?
Not only that. I mean, I know it sounds strong, but you take Mahmood. She is hers was a Bangladesh family, and she doesn't like it being pushed to her, to be honest. And I'm not saying she's stupid. I'm not saying she's like. But my issue about her is, it's very interesting that she should be Home Secretary, and congratulations to her. Can you imagine, in a surprise announcement, Mike Graham was made Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, of Sri Lanka, of Bangladesh, of Iraq. Right, suddenly a whole load of white people suddenly started giving their views in, I don't know, Malawi. Who I see the Malawians have actually all legged it out of Malawi, have all turned up in South Africa, and they're now all being kicked out.
And what I would say, of course, as she said, was that I'm mostly guided by my faith. That's why I've come to Pakistan. I'm mostly guided by my faith. I was born a Catholic, raised as a Catholic, so I'm going to bring a load of Catholics in because they're my people.
That is a very good argument.
Look at the comments on screen.
What's that?
Look at the comments on screen.
I flew into Liverpool, what does it say, John Lennon last week, at your...
Walk into passport control, there's a blue sign saying if you wish to claim asylum, you can do so at the desk.
No. No.
Yeah.
What, to become a Scouser? I know it's a difficult area.
It's always an uncomfortable area.
How about this, right? Yeah. This is on the Lewisham Council website.
Yeah, Lewisham Council is South London, by the way.
The city, we want to enact the principles of the Cities of Sanctuaries movement. They say we offer a positive vision of a culture of welcome and hospitality for all. Create opportunities for relationships of friendship and solidarity between local people and those seeking sanctuary. You know, please leave your machete at the door. Identify opportunities for practical action and work on common cause issues to effect change within and across communities.
What does it mean by that? What does that mean?
They mean you're going to get a load of asylum seekers and migrants coming in and you're going to bloody well like it or get lost. That's what it means, effectively. Celebrate and promote the welcome contributions of people seeking sanctuary.
Look,
I don't want to.
I think I think we've done our bit. Okay, I don't feel as strongly as some people. Okay, about all this. I do think we have now got to have a 3, 5, 7 year pause in all forms of migration. Okay,
Yeah.
we just say we have done our bit and we're not doing any more.
Yeah.
And by the way, so go to the country like that, see which way they vote, and when it happens, then you know that the next government to come in after that, they might do the opposite. In which case, everybody knows. What I hate about what's happened is that I don't feel as though I've participated democratically in making any decision which has led to this front page this morning. So thumbs up to the Sun. And by the way, I don't say it very often, actually. I really objected to the way that Rupert Murdoch managed to encourage everybody to go the extra mile in finding stories. And then directly the wind changed in direction, he then handed over the quotes evidence. It didn't turn out to be evidence, actually, because they were all cleared on 25 of his own employees. Stuff that, Rupert. So I'm not on your side in that respect. I congratulate you on being a great businessman, but you're an absolute dick in relation to the way you treated those employees of yours who you'd hurried home and to try and get bigger and better stories, and at the end of the day just left them hanging out to dry and ruined 3 years of their lives. So suck that up. But actually, this is a proper story which will lead to other stories of its kind.
Yeah.
Who on earth speaks for us? Tell me, who speaks for us? Mike, you've been doing this for donkey's years, okay? So in a way, you actually refer to yourself, don't you, as the almost democratically elected.
Yeah, absolutely. Independent Republican Mike Graham.
Right, so you're the independent Republican Mike Graham. I am not independent. I mainly because the bank, I'm dependent on the bank, right? But so I am the least independent person you can meet. So, but who speaks? Who does speak for?
Yeah,
I mean, a show like this speaks for a percentage of people. Not everybody thinks like us.
One of the reasons people love what we do is because we speak for them, because nobody else does. You know, we give people a voice and we give people the opportunity to listen to people who think the way they do, because a large portion of this country believes in everything that we say.
Well, explain this to me. Okay, supposing you're right, that this does represent a good percentage of people. How is it then, in my neighbourhood, i.e. Surrey, East and West Surrey, in the last elections, they voted in Lib Dems, who are at least as bad as Labour in relation to trying to control what I think is an unreasonable amount of people who want to come to our country without skills. Yeah. Okay.
Well, the reason for that,
why do they do that?
The reason for that is because you live in a very affluent area, and the people that live there, because they're affluent, don't have to put up with this kind of stuff. They will eventually, because it will eventually come to you as well. But at the moment, or at least for the previous, say, 5 years or so, it didn't come to you. It went to places where, like northern England, where places like Rotherham, Rochdale, Oldham, Bradford, Manchester, in a way, and London. And you didn't necessarily, the leafy parts of the home counties, you didn't see it. When I even just 3 or 4 years ago in Sussex, you wouldn't see anybody who wasn't from Sussex. My kids went to school, all the kids were white. There was maybe one black kid, one Indian kid, something like that. Nowadays, you go to Hastings and you can see that it's changed. There are men walking around who are clearly migrants, who have come from Afghanistan, who have come from Eritrea, from Somalia, and they're walking around in the town. And you can see, it's literally changed.
Okay.
The face of Hastings has changed.
So who can speak to us? We'll take this guest. Do you want to hang on? Because do you mind hanging on? So you can ask some questions as well. Who can speak for us without it becoming, BNP and all that stuff? But who can say reasonably? Is anybody saying anything radical enough to control it?
I mean, I think Reform are doing as good a job as they can do, because at the end of the day, it's not about racism necessarily. Because if it was a load of Lithuanians coming in, or a load of Albanians, which was happening, and Albanians, everybody knows, and I mean, I've been in trouble with this before. Everybody knows the Albanians run the drug trade in Britain, right, and all across Europe. They run the cocaine business in Britain, right. They're the worst gangsters that anybody's ever seen.
Could I just point out to you that I did not say that, and if you have got my address by mistake, it's Mike Graham, 43 Bermondsey High Street.
Thank you very much. But I can also tell you that there is evidence for this, because if you look at the numbers of people who are in prison in this country, 12,000 of whom are foreign prisoners, right? the almost entire bulk of those people are Albanians.
Right, okay.
So it's not. I'm not just making this
Okay,
up.
no,
It's
no.
not off the top
Okay,
of my
no,
head.
I didn't think.
You know,
Well,
but
you're a
but
tabloid
these
journalist.
people are white, right?
Yeah.
It's not. So it's not about racism. It's about the fact that I say this all the time. Britain has become infested, and I know that's not a word that people like, with too many foreigners. It's as simple as that, and nobody's saying it. Nobody is.
Okay.
Who it is?
All right.
William Clouston.
Okay, let's have him on then. Yeah, hi, William. It's Kelvin MacKenzie here. Very good to see you, William. Now, the producer of the show, and also actually the kind of leading commercial light of the show is Pooch, right? He said, "I must speak to you," and I said, "Why?" He said, although the words SDP are your party, right? I can remember the party from the 80s, okay? And I was very surprised that you would have any views which would kind of co-join with me. And he said, "You're completely wrong, right? This is a very bright guy." Ask him, first of all, about this shocking story from Stoke Heath, in which 83 social housing houses, new houses, right? New houses are actually going to go to migrants and not to the locals, who will have, through their council tax, part funded it. So in the middle of the country, there's going to be, I don't normally get wound up about something like this, but I feel really upset. And I'm told that you have quite a good way of dealing, that the SDP has quite a good way of dealing with issues like this.
Yeah, no, it is an outrage. I mean, those houses would have cost about £5 million to build, and first priority should go to the taxpayers and the people who have actually contributed to their building and production. No, the whole system, to be honest, I mean, I've spent years talking to Mike about this. The whole asylum system is a racket. It's just got to end. I mean, our policy is to end it. We would withdraw from all the protocols, the Refugee Convention and ECHR and the lot. Unless you get out of the international legal apparatus, then I'm afraid democratic control can't be had. I mean, the public don't decide. All of these rules are made by things beyond the voting threshold. It's international law. That can't hold. So the conditions that gave an asylum system post-war no longer apply. It's now just a route to basically en masse colonize Western countries. And it's extremely dangerous. I think the politicians, the establishment politicians, are way behind on this. People in pubs and cafes and clubs and in the street know about it because they have to deal with it, as Mike says. And it's potentially extremely dangerous. So we need to end this. And you talk about a mass immigration pause. We used to argue for that, actually. I just think that mass immigration should end anyway. I'm less keen on a pause now. I think you need to train your own workers for the jobs we need to make sure there are no skills gaps and start fending for ourselves, really.
Okay, so William, I consider myself kind of linked into most form of politics, right? I didn't, to be fair, I didn't even know the SDP still existed. And it doesn't make a ripple in the polls. And so where do you stand? Do you see what I mean? Before, I understood what the SDP was. It was kind of a right-wing Labour Party, in which people were drifting from the Liberals and everything. Who would you say is your base? And if I was to say to you, name me your 3 policies which actually you think will get some traction beyond the one you just said just then, what would they be?
Well, just to explain what the sort of origin, I mean, the links go back to 81, as you know, and it was huge in the 80s. But we have revived quite well. It takes time to rebuild, and in British political history, it takes about 20 years, unfortunately, to build parties back from scratch. UKIP or post-war Liberals or even the Labour Party, and we have grown rapidly. And obviously, we're planning for the next election to have a full slate of candidates and votes into the hundreds of thousands. But look, immigration, unless you get control of the border, you can't. You're not a democracy if you don't control your own borders. So what the chaos on the South Coast has got to be sorted. We've got to end mass immigration and train our own people to do the jobs. But you've got to rebuild industry. That's the key thing. We've got a huge trade gap. We don't make enough. We keep on getting poorer because we keep on having these huge trade deficits. Literally at the end of each year, you own less and you owe more. That's a key issue. I think the third thing I'd refer to is interlinked to immigration, actually, is housing. Why don't British households have enough money to enjoy life? And one of the key reasons is they spend far too much money on housing. Housing costs to rent or to buy are off the scale. And you mentioned earlier the sanctuary cities issue. The establishment political class in this country is literally dysfunctional in their basic ideas. A lot of them are progressive, what I would call progressive fools. They prefer their city to be some sort of sanctuary city because they feel that makes them virtuous. We had a case in Leeds. We've got 3 councillors on Leeds.
Where are you speaking from right now?
I live in Northumberland, but obviously I
Right.
work between Northumberland and London. But
Right.
we've got three councillors on Leeds City Council. A couple of years ago, Kelvin, Leeds City Council had a motion to make Leeds, the city of Leeds, a sanctuary city for asylum seekers. You know what? The Labour Party voted for it, the Greens voted for it, the Lib Dems voted for it, and the Tories voted for it. The only party in that council chamber that didn't vote for this idiocy was the SDP councillors. And they were, obviously criticised heavily. Lots of nasty words were put to them. But our leader in Leeds City Council, Wayne Dixon, made the point. There's over 25,000 people in Leeds on the current council housing waiting list. And our job is to put them first.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. But you getting your message out there, that 20-year gap, I do get that, because remember, I knew Nigel Farage literally over 30 years ago, right? And he was wandering around in the desert, unwanted, unknown. So I do buy that. But so being the SDP, and this, by the way, I'm in favour of the Southern Party, okay? I started writing about it in 2012-13, right? I've discovered that actually we're going to be run from the damn north, right? So we're all going to end up, Weybridge is going to end up looking like bloody Oldham. I don't know whether you've been to Oldham lately, okay? That's a triumph, isn't it? Oldham. I was on a council estate in Oldham about 18 months ago. I've never been so shocked in my life at the state of what is a town, beyond shocking. And the idea that this dick now says, don't worry about that, we're going to take a load of money off down up here and we're going to shove it up there. The idea that Oldham is going to get any better unless you literally mowed the entire place down is absolutely disregarding economics and politics. I feel outraged at what Burnham is actually going to try and do. So the joy for you may be that you're going to fly into office in 2029 because this guy will actually decimate his own party. Good. Anyway, sorry about that. Got a bit carried away there. So tell me, but we're likely to see a change, are we, in the way that the voting takes place? Are we going to have single transferable vote, one of those ideas, Manchester's idea, or somebody's idea? That gives you a chance, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, yeah. I mean, had there been a form of proportional representation in the last election, we'd have got one MP probably, I think about 210,000 people have voted for us last few years. So we do have votes in certain pockets. But no, I mean, Burnham is actually in favour of voting reform. But the trouble is the people that are keen on it, and we're quite keen on it, you're unlikely to have it at the next election because the Boundaries Commission would have to do about 3 years' work. You'd need new statute law to do it, and it wasn't in the Labour manifesto, so it's not happening next time. I mean, I've said before that we're pretty left wing on housing and on. I believe in public ownership of energy, the energy system, and water certainly, railways certainly. So the sort of active patriotic state that I'd argue for, I've never argued for a big one, but the stuff that the state should do, we should reclaim. But, the right is desperately divided. You've got restore and reform. I think reform is probably peaking and the Tories trying to recover, but people are not inclined to forgive them because of the Boris wave and the rest of it. So it'll take time. I think they have some very good people. I mean, actually, I think people like Nick Timothy, great MP, Katie Lamb, very good communicator. So they have some good people, but the risk for the country, of course, is that if the right is completely divided and eats itself, then you get some revolting sort of progressive coalition in 2029. I mean, Burnham talks about a 10-year plan. Labour's going to lose a vast majority of its seats in the next election.
Oh, yeah. Don't know. Forget about the 10-year plan. It'll be a 10-minute plan. He's going to get slung out and actually will be more reviled, right, as graduates can't find jobs. Economy goes down the pan. The fact is that we pay some premium for having a half-wit at number 10. And by the way, followed by another half-wit. So whatever you do, don't have educated people run the country. It's turned out to be a nightmare. Whether it's Eton or whether it's Cambridge, what we basically want, I think you want a guy who deals with the irrigation in my garden, because he seems to be the most sensible bloke I've ever met in my life. And I think we should put him in there. And and the idea is, don't have many ideas. Come in with one idea. I intend to stop migration coming into this country. And all you do is you focus on that all day long, right? I intend to make our people wealthier, but actually you're going to have to work harder. And by the way, we're going to throw out all the pension ideas. People are going to have to go skin, or they're going to have to work. One or the other, right? We can't have a situation like this.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the trouble is the whole system is a bit knackered. I mean, and it goes both ways. There's the press and the politicians in SW1. I'll give you an example. So Burnham's talking about a massive housing programme. Fine. I mean, I think that's probably quite sensible. But
good idea.
But it'll get nowhere unless you stop immigration. By the way, most demand for housing is driven by migration. But if you stop that, you might have a chance of improving things. But here's the thing, right? Burnham, you've got to give him some credit. He is good at vibes. He's good at press conferences. You'll remember a masterful press conference during COVID up in Manchester. Burnham there with his donkey jacket. Someone passes him a note. This is beautifully choreographed, right? He's a better communicator than Starmer. I thought the press conference he did yesterday in Manchester with the industrial doors behind, it's all carefully done. But the problem is, Kelvin, there's no detail, and none of the press weren't even allowed to ask him questions. He talks about a housing program. How is he going to pay for it? How is he going to pay for it? If you started building council houses, even on land that the state owns, you can build about 5 units for £1 million. That's roughly it. So you'd need £1 billion to build 5,000 homes and house about 12,000 people. None of this detail he is being asked. He's not, and he couldn't answer it anyway. He says he's going to stick to the fiscal rules. Well, I've given him an answer on X. He can cut housing benefit. That's what he should do. We spend 36 billion paying people's rents for them, and we spend 8 billion building homes. But does he have the bottle, Kelvin, to actually cut it with the cretinous backbenchers he's got and the childish people that can't even count on the Labour backbenchers?
You can't, William. I'm going to have to let you go. I'm sorry. I've got a load of less interesting people coming up than you. But so I'm fascinated to meet you, William. I'd never heard of the SDP now in almost 3 decades. So congratulations on fighting the good fight, and good luck in your battles ahead. And I hope we can talk again. Thank you.
Take care. Cheers, Kelvin.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
He's brilliant, William. He's fantastic. By the way, just as we were speaking, I was looking on Twitter. Guess what Shabana Mahmood just tweeted?
No.
Britain has always offered sanctuary to those fleeing war and persecution. And she's got a lovely picture there of Britain would always offer sanctuary to people fleeing war and persecution. And it says, applications for new, capped, safe and legal routes to be opened in autumn based on the Canadian community sponsorship model. Has she gone stark staring bonkers mad? Does she not know that this is the most divisive issue in Britain right now? And she's actually advertising the fact that she wants to bring more people in. Right,
because the mood music is changing within it, and she's hanging on to it. That Canada scheme, it's not a geography lesson, but here you go. You're going to get it anyway. 49 times, Canada is 49 times the size of the UK. They have 12 people per square mile. We have 750. We haven't got any more space. We haven't got any more schools,
I think in Tower
doctors,
Hamlets,
roads.
Yeah, I think in Tower Hamlets it's 1,500 people. It's that.
Well, they're all living together.
They're all living together, packed into.
Not into one house, surely.
Well, yeah, they all vote. 50,000 in one flat. Vote for Sadiq
Well,
Khan.
I remember an old gag in which it was said about Brixton, but you now changed it to Tower Hamlets, in which a canvasser knocks on the door, and he said, "I'm just wondering which way you're likely to vote in the local a general election, he said, well, let's have a thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 Labour, 3 Greens, 1 SDP, but I can't speak for the people upstairs, right? Now, that gang, by the way, which actually I think could probably have got you in trouble in the 1970s, 1980s, today would be an enormously accurate representation of what's going on.
Family voting. Well, it's like that old scene from not 9 o'clock news. Remember when they had the trade union meeting? They're all sitting around the table. And they're like, who wants coffee? And they're like, hands go up. Look, 6 million coffees, 3 million teas, It's like that, isn't it? Because, but it's out of control. What I don't get is why. Just because suddenly, the king of the north appears, they've all gone.
Well, no, let's actually give him his correct title, the Mike Graham title.
Yeah, the knob of the north.
Knob of the north.
Knob of the north is brilliant. But that's one of Pooch's there. It's tremendous. But yeah, it's like they don't care what the people think. As you said, the guy that is doing your garden, William Clouston, Britain is full of sensible people.
Yeah.
People who can see what's going on and who don't believe a bloody word that these politicians are telling them.
Right, but why aren't they voting? Why aren't they voting in line with their intellects?
Well, they sort of did, though, didn't they? If you look at the local elections, Reform had a massive vote there.
They did in working class areas. They did, but in middle class areas, in the home counties, Lib Dems, who are at least as left as Burnham, right? They voted for them. In fact, I know a Reform councillor lost his seat.
But that's because the middle classes are, I'm sorry.
What are they?
Underbellied, weak, lily-livered tossers, for want of a better word. I'm sorry about this, but, they do not wish to be judged by their peers. They don't.
But they don't need to tell anybody. They just need to vote, don't they? They could just go in and go like that. But they didn't even do that.
Yeah, because
Could it be that we're the outsiders?
No.
Okay, so here's a thought that we are the minority.
No.
And actually the kind of Lib Demeries are the majority. No.
No, I don't think so. Not overall. I mean, I think there will be patches, obviously.
Yeah.
And obviously, the more wealthy the area, bizarrely.
It's mad,
Russell
isn't it?
Quirk said to me, when he was campaigning in Essex, he walked past and he was knocking on doors and things, and he walked past, there's a big sign up saying "Vote Green," right? A massive house, huge driveway.
Right.
In the driveway was a Porsche and a Range Rover, and they're saying "Vote Green."
Is this a joke?
You can't make this stuff up.
Is that a joke? Did he go and knock on the door and say what?
He just was like, I'm not even going to bother. But he said it was a very nice Porsche. He's a Porsche specialist. He's got loads of them. And he went, but these are the people that vote Green because they're so well off that nothing bothers them actually, and they don't really mind if somebody says pay some more tax because they've got loads of money.
Right. Well, that's a very interesting analysis. So we'd like So we're going to have a bit of a U-turn here. I'm going to let Mike. I prefer Mike to actually stay here for the full 2 hours because honestly,
maybe we'll do that one day.
And actually, the audience will probably go off the dial at the moment. After a while, they're thinking, if I have to sit and watch that old bald-headed old tabloid tosser 1 second longer, I'm going to kill myself. But with Mike here, so thank you very much indeed.
Listen, I'm loving the show. Really loving it.
All right, well, it's very nice of you to spend your time, especially having flogged yourself for 3 hours.
I'll see you
okay,
tomorrow.
all right, yeah, cheers, Mike. Actually, I might see you later on. Are you in central London at all later
I
on?
will be later. But in fact, I'm coming back here because my daughter's in town at the moment.
Oh, right.
So
Okay,
I'm going to be bringing her to show her the studios.
Oh, right.
And
Okay.
then we'll be maybe Borough Market-ish.
Okay,
or
all right.
something.
Well, I probably won't come
Let
that
me
way,
know.
just in case Murdoch's around there. He's put a contract out for me.
No, well, I'm the same. I've put a disguise on to walk past the news building.
Well, it's not working. Not working. You're still as handsome as ever. Right, now, we've got coming up, I'm not even sure who we've got coming. Rada Sterling, who does a bloody good job, by the way, Rada. Yeah, hi there, Rada. How are you? I don't think the audio is working. Are you talking from Dubai? No, the audio is not working. Okay. Do you want to turn your mic on, Rada? Can she hear me? No?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, that is brilliant.
Hello, good morning.
Hi there.
All right, brilliant.
Hi there. Well, congratulations and thank you for what you do, by the way. battling
thank
for
you.
people who haven't got a voice in often a difficult area of the world. It's fantastic. So, in some ways, I don't feel sorry for people who get kind of lifted in Dubai, because the rules are the rules, and I'm puzzled that anybody who goes to Dubai doesn't recognise that they've got to keep their nose clean, otherwise they could be in a significant amount of trouble. But on the other side of the argument, which is the one that you're fighting for, sometimes the humiliation and the violence is off the scale. Is that true?
I mean, I would say it's not enough to say that if you go to one of these countries and follow the law that you won't get into trouble. That's simply not the case.
Oh, is that
We've
right?
dealt with over 25,000 cases over the past 20 years.
Yeah.
And while some of them have clearly broken the law, others haven't, and they've been thrown behind bars. They've been sentenced to life in prison, sometimes even death, and then later found to be innocent and completely exonerated. We've seen British nationals in this exact situation, and they've spent more than a year. There was Andy Neil. He spent more than a year in prison. He was completely exonerated eventually. So when we've got a justice system that's still immature and not developing at the same pace as their buildings and glamour and glitz and marketing,
Right. Good
people
point.
wind up in trouble. I think we also have an FCDO and a British government who doesn't want to warn citizens of some of the risks of going to the UAE, and that's because they want to promote this mutual trade agreement and security arrangements with the UAE. So they've been turning a blind eye to a lot of abuse of British citizens, letting them get away with it time and time again. We've even had British national Albert Douglas recently. The United Nations ruled that he was in fact tortured and arbitrarily detained. They ruled that he should be compensated by the UAE. The FCDO didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want to assist. They don't want to assist in trying to enforce that UN recommendation. So we do have, I think, a systemic issue of inviting the UAE to market itself into our schools, our education, our utility companies, our train stations, and our media, and promote itself as the new centre of technology, of cryptocurrency, of the influencer capital of the world and the shopping capital of the world. And now we have these television shows coming out, Dubai Blitz, and all sorts of things. And I think the UK is really welcoming it, in a sense, condoning the deceit of British citizens that it is in fact a safe place to visit.
So could you just give me 3 examples of where somebody perfectly innocent has ended up in the most shocking circumstance in Dubai? Because most people look upon Dubai, people like me, as a place where you go in order not to pay inheritance tax or to start a new life, or as you point out, to become an influencer, to make some tax-free money. That's the kind of PR around it. So what would be the reality of it? Give me an example of somebody being arrested for something which the basis of the arrest didn't exist. There was no evidence, and yet they spent a good portion of time in jail.
I mean, I have countless examples of
Right.
and of repeat instances. We have on one hand, we have women who were raped and then jailed for having sex outside marriage. Some of them spent months in jail, despite there being CCTV evidence that they had been drugged in the bar of a hotel, in the lobby bar. Eventually they were released, but of course after being re-victimized again. We had Tori Tui recently. She was charged with attempted suicide as she was trying to flee a situation of domestic violence.
Right.
We've had,
Shocking, that.
again, we've had Andy Neil. He was put in prison simply because he had someone's telephone number in his phone, and it was a neighbour. He was charged with being in some sort of drugs network, and he was an ex-military man. He was a family man. He had nothing to do with drugs, and after spending more than a year in an Abu Dhabi prison, he was completely exonerated. I think we've had recently as well, during the attacks from Iran, we've had British citizens who have been locked up for simply taking a photograph of a burning building inside their apartment building in some instances, or for sharing a photo with a relative back home just to say, I'm safe. So we have instances where there's complete innocence and nobody's committed a crime.
Okay, can I ask you, Narada?
Yeah.
How does the evidence, or why would the arrest happening? Was this part of some commercial feud or an argument between neighbours? What kind of thing triggers off the fact that somebody ends up being arrested?
Yes, I mean, you can have, and we have seen, a Scottish grandfather went next door to complain about noise at 3:00 in the morning. There was a party next door and he was looking after his granddaughter, trying to put her to sleep, a little baby. And he went next door and simply asked, could they turn the music down? Could they stop partying, please? And at that point, he was reported to the police for harassment. The police immediately came over and arrested him. We've had other instances where rental car companies have wanted to extort citizens, and this is Americans and British. We've got numerous examples of this. And they make a complaint to the police and say this person has been abusive or said something offensive. The police take their passport, confiscate it, and they're on holiday. They need to get back to their jobs, get back to their employment. So they're open to being extorted in a sense. So the rental car companies simply say, you pay me $20,000 and I will tell the police to release your passport. And this is a common scam. So a lot of the time... Is that
right? Is that true? Is that true?
Absolutely.
Why don't... Well, should we name the who is it a major car rental company?
It's usually not the major car companies. Yeah. It's usually the sort of more local luxury car companies. These have been all over the BBC for years, these sort of cases. We've had many investigations. So it is a common scam. That's an issue. We've had people who have been arrested because they complained to a customer service operator on the telephone about bad service. People have complained about hotels, or they've left a bad negative review on Google. They've been arrested for that. So again, that so many people have been arrested under the cybercrime laws, which criminalise almost everything that we do online. And especially making a complaint, especially leaving a bad review or having a dispute. I've even seen flatmates arrested for private WhatsApp messages with their British flatmates. They've had an argument, or they've said, you're a terrible person, you didn't clean up after yourself. And if that person reports you to the police because maybe they're feeling vindictive, the police will arrest you and charge you under the cybercrime laws. I've seen husbands and wives during divorces obviously be rude to each other on WhatsApp, and if one person reports that, and they have, to the police, that person's been arrested. So it's very easy to get into trouble in a country that criminalizes our culture in a sense, the way that we communicate with each other in the United Kingdom. Even if we're in the UAE and we have a fellow British spouse or flatmate or friend or colleague, and we communicate with them in the same way that we would in England, we potentially face criminal charges there.
Okay, when your organisation joins in, and by the way, I have no intention of going to Dubai or the UAE. I didn't know anything about this because I would be the kind of person that would point out to the car rental company, I don't want that insurance. I recognise what a scam that is, and the next thing you know, I'd be a part of that. So when you join in, right? So you go to the Foreign Office first? Is that your first port of call, saying this is most unfair, you should get this person out? Or do you go direct to the Dubai government and say, you get them out, otherwise we'll start the publicity? Or how does it work?
Case by case basis. So the FCDO has usually been informed already. They don't like to provide too much service. In fact, they don't want to get involved at all. They'd love to wipe their hands of every single case that comes their way. Right. So what we do is we try to ensure their accountability. We try to in a sense, force them to become involved. We liaise with MPs and House of Lords members to try and encourage the FCDO, if they've been failing, to become more actively involved in a particular case of injustice. We also deal directly with the UAE authorities and diplomats. We raise cases in the media and put that sort of international pressure. But many of these cases are resolved behind the scenes through lawyers, through negotiations. But in a case like we're seeing right now in the media, sometimes it requires that pressure to ensure that a fair trial is had.
Which case is this? Because I know virtually nothing about what happens in Dubai. So if you, I'm a spectator.
Well, I think that the talk of the media at the moment, talk of the town front page news, is that of Brooke George, the young girl who's been charged with murder after stabbing another fellow Englishman in Dubai. And we want to ensure that all avenues of investigation are exploited at this point, and that means trying to get the British authorities involved, the British police involved, to work with the UAE authorities on their forensics, on their investigations, because she's claimed that it was self-defense, that she was punched in the face, she was attacked, and she says she had no choice and picked up a kitchen knife and stabbed the man that she was staying with and actually trying to flee to get back home. So in a case that's so complicated as that warrants the death penalty, and she risks being executed by firing squad, that's the kind of case that absolutely needs the international community to be scrutinising every move the justice system makes.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Yes, look, I had no intention of going to Dubai. Having had this 5-7 minutes with you, I am not going there, and I would urge my viewers, or the viewers of UK Live generally, I'd give it a wide berth if I were you. Thank you very much indeed, and congratulations on all the efforts you make on our behalf. Thank you very much indeed, brother.
Thank you.
Right, well, that was a bit of a wake-up call, wasn't it? Mates of mine go out to Dubai to kind of brown up. It's too damned hot for me. I did go there once. It was like 40 odd degrees. It was like being hit by a wall of heat. Look, actually, there's been nothing much cheerful going on today. I rather preferred it when I was pointing out that Lempit Opik was probably one of the uglier people that I'd met. But I'm told that he's had his jawline changed, and he looks slightly different from how I remember him. But I think what may have happened, but his brain's the same, so that's a disappointment. He did go in there and they didn't find one. Look, if you tried to flog your house this year, it's been an absolute nightmare. I'm sure you know all this. But the stat that I found extraordinary was that 60% of the houses that were put on for sale in January still aren't sold. The only pleasure I get is the fact that estate agents, you can recognise them probably in your town, they're having to take anti-anxiety tablets, whereas previously they were being paid in wheelbarrows that were being delivered twice a week. I mean, it was a fantastically lucrative job, by the way, but actually most of which can be done by technology now rather than humans. But look, we don't want, because I don't know about if you're high street, if you took out coffee houses and estate agents out the high street, it would look like a really bad set of teeth. But look, coming on right now is Charlie Lambdin. He's founder of Housing Marketplace, and he knows all about it. So if he's looking a bit down in the dumps, and he looks as though he may need to borrow some money, he may put out a personal plea to you. Don't take any notice of him. Charlie, very good that you spared the time for us today at quite short notice. Tell me, nobody's going to weep. In the same way as they never weep for a journalist when he goes to jail, or he or she goes to jail, they don't weep for skin estate agents. But things are hard, aren't they?
Yeah, things are very, very hard. There's good news here. That it depends who you are. If you're a buyer right now, it's the best conditions for buying with the most choice of property, and house prices aren't going up, so there's no rush. There's no.
But they're going down, aren't they? Aren't they actually going down? To be truthful.
They are, well, I mean, there are many, many different markets. It depends if you're looking at detached houses or flats or that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, semi-detached and terraced houses are holding up better than either flats or detached houses. And that's because a lot of people are downsizing from detached houses into semis and terraced, and people are trying to sell their flats to upsize into a semi-detached terraced house. So roughly speaking, if you're trying to downsize from a detached house into a semi, it's not going well for you, because the houses at the top of the market are struggling to sell the most of all of them. And if you're trying to sell a flat to upsize into a semi-detached or a terraced house, that's also really hard because your flat values have fallen whilst the semis and the terraced have actually held up. So it's making it harder for that first step up, if you like. It's ignoring who you are, whether you're buying, selling. The friction, the lack of liquidity in the market is the worst that it's been for a very long time, back to 2008, 2009, which doesn't help anybody, because what we all need, whatever we're doing, is the ability to move home when life is for us to move home. And Bank of England's figures came out yesterday. Mortgage lending is really sharply down.
Yeah, I saw that.
Down. You've got today's Zoopla reporting buyer registrations are 15% down. These are big numbers year on year. So at the coalface of the housing market, and very unusually, you're seeing estate agents actually going on social media and going, what's going on? It's a nightmare out there. So, which is very frustrating for all of the people who just have to move home because of life, births, deaths, marriages, divorces, job changes, all of those reasons that people need to move house, which have nothing to do with house prices. It's extremely difficult, and the chance of your deal falling through is very, very high. So for those people who just need to move house to get on with life, the best advice I can give is just get really well prepared. And if the counterparty in your transaction is dragging their heels, push them on it and say, look, if you're not moving, let me know now, because I'd rather know sooner than later. It's really hard to get deals over the line at the moment. And picking up on what you said, so I was in the city, derivatives trader, and then I've been in software for 25 years. I provided software to the housing market. Never been an agent, but I do know them. Very few of them make a lot of money. There's an absolute myth. If you go and look at the average wages in an agency, and this is part of the reason that service levels are so bad, the salaries on offer are actually very, very disappointing in a estate agency. And in their defense, most of them do a pretty disastrous job, but it's a very difficult job. But you've got to remember that everyone selling a house is choosing. They don't have to use an estate agent, but they're choosing. And if it was true what you said, that it's easy, technology can do it for them now, if that was true, nobody would use an estate agent. It's not true. It is an unfortunate, hard truth that if you want to get the best price that the market will pay for your home in a reasonably short space of time, you don't just need an estate agent. You need to carefully avoid the mediocre and bad ones, because they will let you down in this market. You need to go to great lengths to choose your agent like your future depends on it, because it actually does.
Yeah, that's not bad advice. I mean, I'm into that game slightly myself, and I do know that in the end of the day, you actually do get what you pay for. And so if you find somebody decent, I do agree with you on the detached house thing, right? I've always liked a large house. I'm going to stay living in a large house as long as I can breathe. But I do know that mates of mine who are selling to downsize, either because they're the same age as me, or because actually the truth is that a house is a financial instrument for a lot of people. It represents money that they leave to their kids, money that they can take from the fact that this has been a forced moment of saving. That's the truth is. In 25 years, you can either end up owning a house, or you could have gone down the pub every night and actually ended up with nothing at all, and then go to the state where some idiot like Burnham will say, actually, your skin, here's the money, not having realised that actually they could have bought a terraced house and they now could be worth, that round my way, they could be worth 500,000 or 600,000 quid. I mean, so it's an important part of the financial transactions of our country. And what I hate Burnham for is because he wants to take it from me. He wants to try and take the tax from Weybridge and give it to the people of Oldham and tell them you're going to do very well. Oldham will be a shithole in 25 years' time, and the danger is they will turn Weybridge into a shithole as well. Anyway, news at 10 Wednesday. No, but it is important that we have a flourishing property business in our country. It's very, very important. I don't know whether you ever get involved in politics on this, but I don't know whether you read this absolutely shocking story about 83 houses in the middle of a place called Stoke Heath, which was built for social housing. The migrants are now going to move in. So ordinary local people actually are not going to do it. Those houses, I don't know how much they would be in Stoke Heath. They were semis and the like. They're probably 200,000-300,000 quid, 200,000 pounds. honestly, I feel really upset that this happens, right? I'm not really strong in the same way as Rupert Lowe's strong. He's coming on in a minute. But I do feel that kind of story affects everybody. But look, good luck for yourself. I'm glad that you're okay. And I hope that actually, that was quite a nice thing you said about people who work hard in the estate agency business. I imagine their jobs are a nightmare because ordinary people have so much invested in that house that when they can't sell it, they say, why did I bother? Actually, just tough it out. Honestly, tough it out, and things will look better immediately we get rid of this Labour government. Good luck for the future, Charlie, and thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Kevin.
Right. I don't know whether Rupert Lowe is around at all.
He's here. We're going to go to the news.
Oh, we're going to go to the news. Okay, well, we're going to go to the news. It probably won't be as interesting as this show, but the technology has taken over, so here comes the news. I'm not sure who is with. Who? It's with who?
Edward Hughes.
Oh, it's Edward. He's in work, is he? Edward?
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes. In politics, Labour leadership frontrunner Andy Burnham delivered a major speech outlining plans for radical devolution. He pledged a No 10 North nerve centre in Manchester to rebalance power away from Westminster, drive regional growth, tackle the lost generation of NEETs by empowering mayors, and deliver the biggest shift in decision-making in modern times. Cricket fans are mourning England captain Ben Stokes's shock retirement from international Test cricket, citing exhaustion and strained relations. The Princess of Wales completed the Three Peaks Challenge in 24 hours for charity, signalling strong recovery. Resident doctors have accepted a pay deal, ending strikes. Record June heat continues to grip parts of the UK, with calls for action on extreme weather. Other notes include asylum process reforms and ongoing economic debates. Later's Tigers.
Yeah, hi there. Good morning. It's Kelvin MacKenzie. We have actually a kind of political star come in. Actually, joining me anyway is we've got Rupert Lowe coming in. Hi, Rupert. How are you?
Very well, Kelvin.
Anyway, good to see you, man. Good to see you. I thought I said when I asked you whether you might be available, and we biffed him back for a couple of weeks on this, and I said to you it's going to be more David Frost than Jeremy Paxman. I am not interested in attacking politicians of any size, actually. There is no point. They're 10 times cleverer than I am. They know the facts, and just having a general load of blah is ridiculous. So what I'd like to do, first of all, is really talk about who you are at the beginning. Because in the end of the day, you're really voting not only for policy, but whether there's a sense that somebody can actually do something, right? So perhaps we go back to when you were a kid, okay? When you were a kid. So you've been lucky. First of all, I think you're in your late 60s now. You're looking pretty good, Nick. I mean, I'm sure you have the same issues that everybody has. My blood pressure bill would probably sink the NHS in most countries. But so if I look at you when you were a kid, who were your parents? How did they? Did you come from a big family or a small family, or what kind of family? And where was it in the country that you were raised?
Well, I'm an Oxford boy, Kelvin, and I was educated at Oxford schools, the Dragon School, Radley, and my family own a business there which has been going for over 100 years called Lowe and Oliver, which has the royal warrant. We were brought up on a farm, hence farming is my passion and my hobby. I love it, and I'm fortunate enough to have bought a farm as a result of my time in the City of London. So I think in answer to your question, I had a very happy upbringing. I've got three brothers. We had my parents actually got divorced when I was 13, which was a bit destabilizing. But other than that, no, I think I was very fortunate, and I had a loving, secure family upbringing in a Britain which was then at peace with itself and knew who we were, which is a far cry from where we are today. So I think in terms of my experience after that, I basically went to.
Did you go to university? Did you go to?
I went to Reading. I went to Reading University and studied estate management. I didn't complete the course. I actually went off to the City of London, where I spent I think I spent about 3 or 4 years in the City of London in various firms. So I had a stepmother, I was about to tell you, who I didn't get on with particularly well. I was going to go and farm. In the end, I went and made my own way in London. I became a Lloyd's insurance broker to start with, got myself a job there. Then I became a commodity broker in commodities. Then I got a job with Phillips and Drew, which, as London effectively deregulated, I became involved in financial futures, and I was on the board of the London International Financial Futures Exchange. Right. I actually played a part in the committee that designed the FTSE 100 index so that we could trade a future on it. And then I worked for Baring Securities, did a lot of business in Japan. Then I worked for Morgan Grenfell in the Treasury, where again I was involved in interest rate futures, options, warrants, and other sort of leveraged instruments. And after that, I changed my career and I became chairman of a football club, Kelvin. As you probably know, I became chairman of Southampton. One of the things I did when I was in the city was I was an investor in a BES, as it was in those days, the Business Expansion Scheme, a tax-driven investment, which I made in, I think, 87 and 88. And I fought a shareholder revolt, and I ended up being chairman of this company called Secure Retirement, which we used to do a reverse takeover. It's a long story, but we got it a listing, and we used it to do a reverse takeover of Southampton Football Club. I was going to build the stadium, and I was chairman of the holding company. But Southampton then got into trouble, and I was asked to become chairman of the football club as well. And given that I was an active and reasonably successful hockey player, I'd also played football at the Dragon School quite extensively, and I was a reasonably good sportsman. I agreed to be chairman, and unlike a lot of my forebears, I actually started going to the changing room. So I think I played a part in helping them stay up. We were doomed to be relegated, but we avoided it that time. We built the stadium, and that was a £34 million project, which we delivered on time and on budget. And I took an interest in the young players. I set up the academy at Southampton, which has produced players like Bale, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Walcott, Lallana, lots of very good young players who went on to play Premier League football and indeed football for England. So we got relegated under Harry Redknapp in 2000.
What did you make of Harry Redknapp? Did you get on with him?
I don't like Harry Redknapp very much. I think he's everybody thinks he's a very friendly, decent sort of chap, but he's not privately what you see him as publicly. I didn't choose Harry Redknapp. I should have actually resigned after Glenn Hoddle. I tried to bring Glenn Hoddle back. Hoddle and I worked together very effectively. And then Hoddle went to Tottenham. I got some compensation from Tottenham for both him and John Gorman. And then he wanted to come back after he left his alma mater. And the board basically, for the first time, took the view that it wasn't the right appointment, even though I was pretty sure it was, and I had it all agreed. And I should have at that point resigned, but being a good team player, much against what people have accused me of, I stayed as chairman, and I ended up working with Harry Redknapp. But no, I think one of the best days of my life was 2003 with Gordon Strachan. We got to the cup final. In fact, Gordon rang me the other day. And we didn't play at Wembley. We played at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, but we lost 1-0 to Arsenal to a Robert Pires goal, but it was a fantastic day out, and I will never forget it. So look, I then, after that, I've always had an interest in politics. I fought against
Can I ask you then? You've had a hugely successful career.
Well, I'm in Parliament, Kelvin. I've had a career and I've done lots of different things, yes.
Yeah,
and
correct.
I own lots of different businesses.
Yeah, correct. And it's very difficult to be in a lot of different things without going, losing money or things going wrong over that time, because that's the point. The point is life's like that. As long as you keep going, it's fine. But during that time, did you have any? So you were comparatively old, right, when you decided that politics you felt that the country was changing. What kind of age were you then?
That's not quite true, because I for some reason I can't remember why, I actually had a look at the Maastricht Treaty in the early 90s, and
Right.
if you remember, we signed the 72 European Communities Act, which basically surrendered a chunk of our sovereignty to an unelected bureaucracy in Europe. And the Maastricht Treaty was a further surrender of that sovereignty. We had some surrender of sovereignty with the 87 Single European Act, but this was a massive, sort of appalling act. I say it was full of more loose ends than a plate full of spaghetti. And I fought against that. I wrote to all the national media. I wrote to the Lords, the Commons. I wrote to absolutely everybody and asked them to confirm they'd read it before they signed it. Anyway, the bottom line is it did go through Parliament, and subsequently I've discovered a lot of the MPs were whipped, obviously, to vote for it, and they hadn't read it. So that started my disaffection with the Tory party and my deep interest in politics. And I then stood in 97, because if you recall, John Major, Paddy Ashdown and Tony Blair all wanted to sign up to the euro.
Yeah.
And I thought surrendering our currency was a very bad idea, particularly to a Europe which had failed politically, and it was trying to ram through a financial settlement through the currency. And I maintain that euro is not a currency; it's an index, and it is doomed to failure, Kelvin. So I'm a great believer that a currency represents the GDP of the country, which should be effectively under the control of a sovereign parliament like ours. But and that's not what Europe is. So look, I stood in the constituency I live in, which is the Cotswold constituency. It's changed now; it's now North Cotswolds and South Cotswolds. But I got 6.6% of the vote. And if you recall, I think the referendum party got about 815,000 votes, and it was Jimmy Goldsmith, who never gets enough credit, who forced all the parties to promise a referendum before we surrendered to the euro. And extraordinarily enough, Gordon Brown, who I think is responsible for a very large chunk of our demise, along with Tony Blair, everyone gives him credit for it, but actually he came afterwards. This was in 97. So that saved us effectively from the euro, which would have been the end of our sovereignty once and for all, because all of our gold reserves were going to be shipped to Germany, what was left of them, and because Gordon Brown shortly after that flogged the whole lot anyway at $260 an ounce. But look, so I fought against that, and I then watched Blair devolve power to unelected quangos and strip Parliament of its sovereignty, which effectively he did very effectively, which is why we're now in the situation we're in, and why the old fox himself came out trying to distance himself from everything that he's done recently. But so I then did a lot for Business for Sterling. Then I did a lot for Vote Leave. And I have a letter on the wall of my loo from, I think it's Boris Johnson, Giselle Stewart, Michael Gove and Matthew Elliott thanking me for what I did. And then I basically watched with horror as, having won that democratic vote, which I would have accepted had it gone the other way, but the Remainers didn't accept it, and nor did our establishment, who wanted to be part of this unelected post-war socialist experiment, which is doomed to failure. So ultimately, I carried on lobbying, and one thing led to another, and I ended up standing for the Brexit Party and being elected as an MEP. And then I carried on when Nigel left after the Brexit Party to make some money, which is what he told us he wanted to do. And then, one thing led to another, and I stood and won my seat in Great Yarmouth, which is a fantastic place and fantastic people. I had to go east to find the bedrock of England. There's no point in standing in these QE affected, home counties, which have basically had life far too good and have been slowly brought to the boil. You've got to go to proper parts of England where people have been let down by the post-war establishment. Yeah. And I now have a great constituency of people who do understand which way is up, and I think appreciate what we're doing. So that was a huge honor to be elected. And actually that was probably one of the biggest achievements that Nigel, myself, Tice and James McMurdoch achieved. We were brand new MPs breaking into a parliament that didn't want people from outside, as they saw it, free radicals coming in. So Lee Anderson, if you recall, was already an MP as an independent. He came to Reform and he stood as Reform and won again. So he was the 5th MP. So look, I don't think it's fair to say I came to politics that late, but I become an MP late. I would concede that. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So as you have clearly got older, there's been a combination of events. The nation is in change. I mean, I'm a Londoner, and I look at London today and reflect on my age and the period of time, and it's literally astonishing. And I always say to people, I said, if this happened in India, right, that suddenly you walk down some rather, big city in India, and half the people were white, you would say to yourself, well, there's something going on around here that I haven't been told about. So I feel it's just the change without any democratic control, which I find upsetting. But looking at yourself, so you're a farmer, business guy.
I've got a farm. I'm lucky enough to have that. That's my hobby. I don't make any money.
How many acres have you got there, by the way?
I've got 865 acres.
So when you watch the Clarkson show,
he's not far away. He's not far away from us.
When you watch it, do you feel? Look, I'm a kind of Londoner kind of bloke, So this is like a really enjoyable piece of television. Is that what life is like?
Well, I think what's happened, Kelvin, is that people have lost touch with the seasons. They've lost touch of where their food comes from.
Yeah, agreed.
People wander down to a supermarket and buy raspberries in sort of midwinter or strawberries in midwinter or whatever they feel they want to eat in midwinter, which they normally in past wouldn't have been able to do. So the reason I like farming, to your point, yes, Jeremy Clarkson's show, and it's very clever of him to have done what he's done, but I suspect only he could have done it with the panache that he's done it with.
Yeah, correct.
He's right. The thing I love about farming and the reason I love it is it keeps you humble, Kelvin. You cannot, as they say, fart against thunder. So if nature sends you a curved ball, however able or prescient you think you are humbled by nature on a regular basis with farming. So, every single year it throws something at you, whether it's weather, whether it's some form of disease, whether it's, if you've got cattle, whether they break out, whether you end up with some sort of, epidemic in your herd. No, and man, I think, has become incredibly high on his own supply. And I watched this over the wretched, poor decision-making during COVID and during almost everything that the state touches, it goes wrong. And it's the arrogance of man who thinks that he is effectively able to control everything that nature throws at him, which he simply isn't. So farming, I think, keeps you humble. You cannot count for anything. Even this season, to give people an example, I mean, last year we had a terrible year. We had a drought, which was in the Cotswolds terrible. I'm very fortunate I have Fergal O'Brien training the horses on the farm, so we have an income stream which we've diversified.
Can you tip us a winner while you're on, so that at least we come away wealthy?
Fergal doesn't really tip, Kelvin. I think with a lot of these guys, they prefer not to try and tip. They just train the horses, and if they win, they win. It's quite good. But look, so I that's why I like it. But people need to understand farming is an incredibly lonely and hard way of life. And I watch with horror as these Labour politicians who've never been near a farm in their life. I mean, I think that Steve Reed character, he bought himself a new pair of sort of chamois Wellington boots, which most farmers couldn't afford anyway. I think they got about 3 outings, and then he got shuffled in to go and do something different, which is what happens in with cabinet ministers these days. Hence, they never get anything done. So it is an incredibly hard way of life. It's a lonely way of life. It's very capital intensive, and politicians, I hear these idiots say, "Oh, well, it's time we got farming more profitable." Well, you can't guarantee to make farming profitable. And very often, for large chunks of history, farming has been unprofitable. but every now and again it does make a profit. But it is a crucial enterprise for an overpopulated island. It should not be overlooking the production of food here. And we saw that we've seen it during various wars. And as you probably know, a lot of the Crimea War was about grain supplies from the Crimea. So strategically, we should be looking after our farmers, propagating our farmers, supporting our farmers. And when it comes to this ridiculous IHT on both farms and family businesses, what most of these Labour politicians don't understand is that these businesses are very long term. They require very large amounts of capital to be invested if we're going to have production of food, or indeed the flourishing of our family businesses, which I consider to be the backbone of Britain. I don't consider these corporates who are owned by faceless shareholders who are hoping to scrape through to retirement and have a comfortable time playing golf or whatever they want to do. I mean, we need long-term planning, and family businesses like ours, we've been going over 100 years. We have people who work for us for 40 or 50 years, and we're very proud of the long-term service that people give us. But to then tax them and force people to sell their farms and sell their businesses, you're breaking the backbone of Britain, and you're just empowering the Larry Finks and the sort of faceless corporatists against the sort of what I call vein of decency that runs through Britain and has protected us against a lot of these nonsensical schemes. And I consider that
Rupert,
I consider post-war Europe to be a scheme, Kelvin, to destroy the nation state and create a sort of European superstate founded on socialist principles, which I don't think most of us in this country want.
Okay, fine. Look, let's just try and move on. You're now the leader of a party, right? I mean, it's an incredible thing, and gets, I think, a tremendous amount of coverage, really, considering the percentage size of your party. I mean, it's incredible, and you personally seem to have got some kind of godlike quality among your followers, which is fine. Well done, you. But what I can't understand is, so I've known Nigel Farage now for 30, 35 years. Okay, I had some radio group, and I gave him a bit of a go on coming on there, so he could make his points. I've always found him a pretty decent guy. I've never worked for him, right? I'm not part of reform, right? I'm a kind of.
I don't think he's ever employed very many people other than in political parties, Kelvin. So it's difficult to work for him.
Okay, fine. But what I mean is, I'm not kind of committed in really any form, even politically. Really, I'm really a conservative that drifted towards reform. So. Why is it? I don't know you, Rupert, but what I do know is from your background, I'm sure you're you have a view and you want to see that view work. I quite get that. Nigel, I know a little bit, and I suspect there's a bit of that in him as well. What is it that led to that happening? So I think everybody I meet wants a coalition, wants the right to coalesce in some way, right? That means Conservatives, reform, restore. It's incredible that the word restore is used in relation to the Conservatives. Even you must admit this is a fantastic thing to be said. That is never, ever going to happen, by my sense. Is that right?
Well, I think you underestimate the level of our support, Kelvin, actually. I mean, I think our support is far greater than most of the media would have you believe. And that's because we've been very successful on social media. So we're able, thanks to Elon Musk and his free speech platform, which has forced Facebook and Zuckerberg to do the same thing on their platform on Facebook, and the other platforms have had to follow. So we've now got an ability to communicate directly with people, which we do both locally and nationally. And I think you misstate it when and a lot of the mainstream media, which is now owned, of course, by media moguls who have their own agenda, and often their own agenda comes above the agenda that may or may not be in the interest.
That is true, by the way. That is 100% true.
Of course it's true. Of course it's true. Come on. Yeah. The 5 golden rules of business, Kelvin. You're a great subscriber to that. What's in it for me? So
Correct.
Of course. So we communicate directly with people. I didn't necessarily want to be where I am, but I've got the bit between my teeth, and I'm intent on giving people an opportunity to vote for radical change. And radical change means actually the restoration of what we used to have in this country, which was fantastic. And it doesn't mean, I saw Konstantin Kisin giving a speech at ARC, which again, as I say, the time for speaking is over, time for writing articles is over. It's time for the British people to do something now. And I think they are beginning to realize that they've got to coalesce around a theme of basically rescuing their country, because their country has been under threat by design from a malign establishment, which has now, I think, gone rotten. So I'm here communicating with them, and I was doing that, to your question, within reform. And I think I was driving a lot of reform support without being big-headed. I wasn't doing it because I wanted to be in a position where I was usurping Farage or indeed anybody else. I was part of that group. Now, I'm accused of being a non-team player, but that's not true. I just got on with it. I was not included in press conferences. I was left out for whatever reason, but I just carried on. And I have no beef with any of the reform supporters. I think most of them want the same thing that you and I want, which is a country that makes sense and a country that, effectively operates in the interests of the British electorate, the people who pay their taxes, the people who've made our history, the people who fought for us in multiple world wars to save Europe from itself, usually either the Germans or the French. So at the end of the day, I just want a sovereign parliament in Westminster, which I've consistently worked for since I looked at that wretched Maastricht Treaty, and I began to understand the sort of deceit which came with this post-war plan to reconstruct Europe. But in order to do that, they had to destroy the nation state. Now, with regard to why am I not working with Nigel, you'll have to ask him that, Kelvin. I don't particularly want to keep going over this, and everybody, I've said my bit on it, and my bit is he made the decision to politically attempt to assassinate me. Not
in what sense? In what sense?
Well, he basically, he gave you the real reason in an interview the other day, where he said the reason they had to get rid of me was because of my views on mass deportation, and I suspect my views on the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs, which, as I discovered, I talked about in Parliament, and Parliament hasn't heard the truth ever. People don't speak the truth in there, Kelvin. You know that. What they do is talk about everything but the truth. I speak the truth in there. I'm not that able or brilliant. I just tell the truth. I tell things as it is. So, and he said we had to get rid of him, and I think the words were, it may have been brutal, but that's the way it was going to be, something like that. There's an interview, he said it publicly. But actually, there were two false witness statements given. Zia Yusuf gave a false witness statement that I would, in a meeting, and I'd threatened to hit him. This was 3 months after the meeting, and there was absolutely no evidence other than evidence to confirm it wasn't true on the WhatsApp chain. Lee Anderson went around Parliament, and I only know this because I had to attend a voluntary interview with the police at Hammersmith Police Station. He said I was going around Parliament saying I was a very good shot and I was going to shoot Zia Yusuf. Well, can you actually genuinely believe that to be true? Of course it's not. It's palpable rubbish. And it was proved to be that because there's absolutely no veracity or basis to it whatsoever. Now, they gave these two witness statements. I can't get the police to give them to me. I know from the questioning I had from the police, I know roughly what they said. So this was a hit job. They also said I had early onset dementia and that there was bullying, evidence of bullying in my office, which is absolute rubbish. There's never been any bullying in my office. And if anybody tells you otherwise, they're lying. It's just not true. So at the end of the day, I run multiple businesses and have done for all my life. And I own lots of business. I still get on with everybody and I've never had an issue. So this is rubbish. Now, had Nigel said to me, you're not for me, go and be a backbencher and sit on the backbenches, which I now do, which I did for a while as an independent, I would have said, fine, that's okay. You're the leader. You don't want me around. That's fair enough. But no, they tried, Kelvin, to take me out of the game, right? So look, that's history. That's history. And you may have seen recently, I've written a letter because ultimately, the government again is trying to create this new safe route for people from countries which I don't consider to be desirable coming here. And we've written a letter effectively to basically say we'd like to work cross-party, and that includes Nigel. That includes Nigel to stop this. This is a poke in the eye for the British people. They haven't stopped the boats. They haven't smashed the gangs. We've still got, to your point, people pouring in here. We don't know what their beliefs are or what their views are. We know many of them don't share the same religion or culture as us. And we don't know, whether they're going to make a contribution or not. The chances are they're not going to make a contribution, as we know. So why is it that the government feels it's okay then to open up now a safe and legal route for more of these people to come? It's just wrong. So I've offered to work cross-party on that with everybody, the Tories, with Nigel, with everybody. And I in some ways, I've sort of put aside the political attempt at assassination, which I thought was unchristian and unethical. But it fired me up to basically do what I thought needed to be done between now and 29. So I am not intending to do anything or go anywhere other than give the British people an option to vote for something which they can believe in, which will do its damnedest to restore Britain to what it should be, what it has been, and what it can be.
Okay, well, let me ask
you. We have the best people. We have the worst leadership now.
Right, but actually...
Not only worse, corrupt. The leadership is corrupt. The judiciary is corrupt. The civil service is corrupt. The entire British establishment.
What would you
Rupert? That goes for the media. That goes for the media as well. A lot of the media is in bed with this nasty little sort of cabal, which needs to be... We need Hercules and the Augean stables. We need the whole lot to be washed away and we can start again.
Rupert, what would you actually do? Because these are fine words, right? And I recognise you're batting in a way which is outside what looks like your strength. I mean, every credit to you. But what would you actually do? You're now. No, let me ask you a question. You are now, right? The Prime Minister, right? Rupert Lowe, Prime Minister. Surprise night, right? Everybody feels as you do, and they all vote for you. What would you do? What would be the first thing you do on that Friday morning at 8 o'clock? What do you announce is going to stop the influx of people coming illegally across the channel?
Let me ask you, which I was about to do before you rudely interrupted me, Kelvin. What have you actually read? Have you actually read?
No, I didn't. I weighed it.
Have you been on our website before the interview and read any of our policy documents?
I tell you what, I was very grateful. Do you know what? I was very surprised.
Have you read any of them?
I thought that was going to be a bomb, right? Do you remember? It was all taped up together, right?
Have you read any of them?
No, I was astonished by it. I was astonished by it because of the detail.
I say to you, read.
I am not going to read effectively what looked like 400 pages ahead of a 1 hour interview. I'm not doing that.
In answer to your question, Britain is not going to be restored by some soundbite answer that I might give in 2 seconds to your show. And look, I'm delighted.
Give it a 5-minute answer.
I'm delighted to be on your show, but you're not. And nobody is going to rebuild Britain on a soundbite. Okay. So the reason we're producing this research, and that was my issue with Nigel. Nigel's not interested in policy. He never has been. But you are not going to restore Britain without having policy, deep thought policy, which basically shows people what you're going to do. And that, to your point, is what needs to happen. So we've done one on mass deportations. We've explained why it's happening, how we change the constitutional structure in order to stop it, and then how we basically create a hostile environment and we get rid of, starting with the people arriving illegally, the people living here illegally, the foreign criminals in our prisons, and then we, like Denmark and Sweden, turn our attention to those people living here who are not contributing to Britain and are going to be a cost to our taxpayers going forward. So that is all in that document. We've done the same with net zero and oil and gas, reviving Aberdeen, starting to drill our extremely fertile waters offshore Shetland, and actually stop Aberdeen decaying, which it's doing now, which is an absolute own goal by that lunatic Ed Miliband. and don't listen to a word they say on renewable energy, it is the most expensive energy in Europe. And we cannot revive our economy if we have the most expensive energy in the world. It's just not going to work. So we've done one on the British pub. We've done one on Englishman's home is his castle. I've written a very big document that's coming out soon on the economic policies that we need to put in place. These are properly published documents that people can then read and comment on. But this is the problem with the British media, Kelvin. And I, when you were at the Sun, I admired what you did. You were witty. You basically created a headline that flogged the paper for a day, and then it was chip paper, and you moved on to the next story.
Correct.
Well, we can't do that if we're going to restore Britain. We have to have a plan, to your point. And the plan means basically restoring power to Parliament. Because what happened is in 97, Blair passed legislation which effectively ripped power away from the elected MPs, who are supposed to be the people's representative, and he gave it to unelected quangos. And what's happened since then, and quangos like the Supreme Court, like all the quangos I see at the Public Accounts Committee, where I every week now I'm on the Public Accounts Committee, and I question these ludicrously dim-witted civil servants who couldn't care about the amount of waste. They're no longer the vocationally driven civil service that they used to be. They're now a self-serving bureaucracy, which basically has become malign, and it's not serving the British people. And that goes right from the top, from Dame Antonia Romeo, who's now the cabinet secretary, for goodness sake. She's embedded DEI in justice, in the Home Office, and now obviously in the Cabinet Office. And all this nonsense needs to be expunged from Britain. And I think the British people want that, which is why they're supporting Restore Britain, because that's what we're going to do. Now, you can get rid of all that stuff quite quickly, but to get and to reverse Tony Blair's malign legislation, the Human Rights Act, the Equalities Act, there's a raft of Tony Blair legislation, him, Derry Irvine, all these, Lord Faulkner, all these people who, in my view, are traitors. We need to get rid of all that and return power to the elected assembly, which is Parliament. I'm not in favour of devolution. I think it's an absolute and utter disaster. Scotland is a banana republic. It's completely corrupt, even more corrupt than we are, which is difficult. The Senate is a joke. And the Northern Ireland Assembly, again, get rid of the whole lot and return to the Act of Union of 1707, which is what made this country great. And I can tell you, I've got vast numbers of people in Wales and Scotland and in Northern Ireland who completely agree with that. We don't want to be salami sliced by a bunch of half-witted lawyers who basically are skinning us and making a very, very comfortable living for themselves. So look, we've got to change all that. And we will. If we're given the power by the British people, we will, trust me, we will change it. Watch. But the Tories could have done it, Kelvin, with an 80-seat majority. That's the disaster. That's the catastrophe.
Boris was a disaster. It was a disaster for his party and a disaster for our country. An absolute disgrace. Who then decided to make 5 million quid by telling gags around the world at various rather Republican jamborees. He's an absolute shocker, that guy. He blew up the country.
He's a journalist. He likes to write an article and move on. And you can't restore the country if you do that. So Boris had the chance and he failed. I mean, ultimately, I think we all know his wife was running the country after he won the election, not him. So I honestly think that, and we find now, actually, although I blame Blair, he was the architect of the downfall. But actually, Cameron then propagated it. And whereas Boris could have reversed it, he singularly failed to do so. And
what about Starmer?
A lot of the legislation we now come up against, it's not Labour legislation, Kelvin, it's Tory legislation.
Yeah, no, I buy that.
A lot of it's absolute. I mean, you couldn't believe that a Tory party could even look at it, let alone put it through Parliament.
That's true. So my local MP, for instance, Elmbridge and Runnymede, honestly, what he's doing in the Conservative Party is beyond me. He'd probably do a lot better as a Lib Dem or something like that. And, but can I ask you this? we've now had Starmer for a couple of years. We now have a new direction for Labour, which looks pretty disastrous from my kind of middle class wealth creating aspiration.
You're talking about the Ghostbuster. You're talking about the Ghostbuster, the last chance for the Labour Party to save itself.
Yeah, I honestly, so where do you, if you close your eyes now and you woke up in 3 years' time, what state is our nation likely to be in under this Burke?
Well, it's extraordinary, isn't it? But then again, you've probably seen our rape gang report, which we've done, which is, if you can't read our 110-page or whatever it is deportation document, you're not going to read 219 pages of the rape gang, Kelvin. You simply don't have the attention span to concentrate for that long.
No, you're quite right. Well, I am not a farmer.
That shows you how evil the Labour Party is. The Labour Party put their own power ahead of the interests and the rights and wrongs of the most vulnerable girls, white working class British girls in our society. True. They know this has been going on. Look at the Metropolitan Police. You know, they've now been shamed into reopening 4,000 cases in London. Now, we know, and Sadiq Khan, you know, that sort of, I call it Sadiq Khan's war zone. I mean, whether he's, you know, what his agenda is, God knows, Kelvin, but it's destroying London, whatever it is. And he is in denial. He says rape gangs are not happening in London. We know they're happening in London. And we know what's happened to the police. The police have been, and look at what happened to Henry Novak. They've been bullied into feeling that they're petrified of being called racist. So in the case of Henry Novak, the murderer was not ever handcuffed, whereas Henry Novak arguably may, it's a distant may, but it's a possible may, because when you get stabbed, the body naturally clots and heals itself. But when you rip somebody's hands behind their back and you put them in handcuffs, you open up the wound and it starts bleeding again. So none of us are going to know the truth. But the fact of the matter is, why did they not listen to him? They cuffed him and they left the murderer uncuffed. Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, that is not objective policing in any sense of the word. So why is it that we have become institutionally embarrassed about policing with no fear or favor? That's what the police should be doing. It's a bit like the BBC is supposed to be impartial, but we know they're not, Kelvin. You know, they didn't invite my candidate onto the Question Time show in Makerfield, even though we got more votes than the Tories, the Lib Dems and the Greens put together in the end. So look, it's the establishment's rotten. It's gone rotten. And I think, you know, people can see it. People have had enough of it. And I actually think the whole thing now has changed, and people, they're not arguing about, you know, whether the right's right or whether the left's right. They're arguing, I want my country back. And that's what we're intent on doing. We're intent on giving them somebody to vote for who may not deliver, but we're going to give it a damn good go, because it may be too late. I can't guarantee it's not too late. The rot, I know, goes deep. I see it in Parliament. Every single day I see how deep the rot's gone, how corrupt the whole system is, how unreliable government is, how unreliable a lot of the MPs are. You know, they're perfectly charming people. I get on well with most of them. But honestly, the system needs to be changed. And when are we going to start to cease to be ashamed of our history and ashamed of who we are and what we've done? We've done probably more good in the world than any other single country in history. And yet we beat ourselves up, and we've got this liberal elite which wants to destroy all of the good in the country and make people feel that they should be apologetic for things. Well, no, I don't feel remotely apologetic. I feel proud of my country. And I think people agree with that. So once we get their mandate, as I say, this is now no longer just me and a group of people. If people want this, they've got to do it for themselves. So my theory is the welfare state has turned us into a nation of softies. We've lost sight of what reality is. And I hope the bedrock of Britain will respond. It is responding. We're seeing our branches leap up reflexively everywhere, Kelvin. We've got, I don't even know how many, they leap up without me being able to follow how many we've got. It's maybe 400 branches. We're covering most of the country, not quite all of it. We had a look at it at the weekend. But These are people who are doing it off their own bat. And that's what we need. And you know, how many media covered the fact that 1,200 people came to Makerfield on the day I was there on the Saturday? 500 people came to Norfolk for the local elections. These are not, as the Daily Mail suggested, far-right ethno-nationalists. These are concerned British citizens, tax-paying citizens like me. And they turned up at their own cost, of their own volition, and they helped to canvass. Very often for more than one day. That's the story. I haven't seen that covered at all.
Right. Look, it's fantastic. It's incredible that this can happen. Well, I want a couple of things. There's some viewers' questions come in, but one other thing. You've got 4 kids. I don't know how old they would be, possibly in their 30s. I suspect.
I have got 4 children. I've got 2 grandchildren. So I have a son of 35.
Yeah.
I've got a son of 33, a daughter of 30, and a daughter of 26, and I've got 2 grandchildren.
How do they feel? About a dad being in the public eye in that way? I normally find with your children that they often go in different political directions to yourself, but you can't control your family. You just have to say it's free speech. You're entitled to your view.
Well, the great thing about a family, Kelvin, particularly the Lowe family, is we all challenge each other. So they're very good at keeping my feet on the ground. They've got their own views. So if you want their views, you'll have to ask them.
Yeah, fine.
But look, we have a very happy family. I've been married for 40 years. And, you know, probably the most enjoyable time is when we're all together and we're all enjoying dinner or whatever it is, or a walk on the farm or whatever. I think, again, the family is one of the most important units within the country. And that's what this progressive left have been trying to destroy. They've tried to destroy the family, destroy the community, destroy the nation state. They've tried to destroy everything, in my view, that is good about Britain. And I loathe them for it. I think they are the most horrific, vile bunch of, and very often aggressive people who don't respect free speech. They don't respect people's right to have a view, and they think they're right. And all they're really doing is creating a position for themselves, because they would be incapable of running a business or being successful in a competitive
That bit is true. That bit is true.
So they just create this, what I call gop of mess, from which they can clamber up the ladder and enrich themselves. And you see it. Look at Rachel Reeves and Bridget Phillips and Lucy Powell. I mean, I can't see them generating any wealth in a million years, Kelvin. So, no, I mean, look, I honestly, what the hell are we doing as a country? Really, what are we doing?
Let me ask the viewers what they've got questions for you, Pooch. Let's see. Okay, here's one from Mark Anthony J. I hope Kelvin asked Rupert Lowe how he's working for the Tories on his seat on the Public Accounts Committee. I don't quite understand. What's the point that's being made there?
Well, I think the question he's asking is why did the Tories put me on the Public Accounts Committee? It was a Tory position. And the reason they did that was because, unlike most people in Parliament, I've actually got a career and an experience in the City of London. So I'm able to analyse accounts and balance sheets, and I'm able to ask piercing questions of indolent, lazy, sort of civil servants who are paid too much, who have too big a pension, and who do not want to make decisions for fear of losing their job. So look, I think the answer to that question is I was asked by the Tories to do it. I made it quite clear to the Tories that if I did it my way. I am effectively not a Tory on there. I'm an independent, but I've been put on there by the Tories. And interestingly, when I first went on the committee, I think there was because we've got a lot of Labour and Lib Dems on that committee, and they objected to the sort of tone of my questioning at the beginning. I think particularly when I called Dame Antonia Romeo the Queen of Woke, which if you Google her, it doesn't take you very long to see that's what she's known as in Westminster and in the media, and it's a very accurate description of her in my view. But so look, there was a bit of a revolt, and actually now what's encouraging is I now get on very well with all my colleagues, Lib Dems, Labour, the whole lot. And I quite often see them joining in and agreeing with me. So I think, it's been a very good appointment. It's got nothing to do, and I'm not going to join the Tory party, Kelvin. I think the Tory party is still broken. I like Kemi Badenoch. I think she's done a very good job in stabilising it, and she's got some extremely good young Tory MPs who I have the highest admiration for. But, they're held back by the legacy of what I call the One Nation Cameron MPs.
Yeah, Cameron was a disaster.
Cameron was a disaster. So they're still in Parliament, and Parliament is a very hierarchical place. So if you've been in Parliament a long time, it's like a pecking order. It's like being back at public school. And often I have to sit in the chamber for 2 or 3 hours to speak because, as an independent and as a new MP, you are pretty low down the pecking order. So you have to wait for everybody else to do their bit before you do your bit.
Yeah, right.
And you have to be in a debate at the beginning of the debate if you're to speak. Otherwise, you can't speak. So look, there's all sorts of public school-esque like rules in Parliament which make it difficult for young MPs. So I think to the questioners, I suspect his question is driven by this view that I'm a closet Tory. Well, I'm not. I ceased to be a Tory, as I told you earlier.
Yeah.
Around the time of the Maastricht Treaty, and I've never gone back. So I'm intent on changing the way Britain is governed. I'm going to give the British people an option to do that, and then let's see where we go from there. But I think, if I fall short, which I'm not intending to do, then obviously we need to look at sensible ways to install common sense and make Britain a better place, not a worse place, and to counter this sort of malign strategy of what I call strategic voting by the left.
Have you seen this question up on the screen there? Rupert saying, Rupert, as a patriot, do you still intend to leave the country if the left wins the next general election?
Well, look, I am a patriot, Kelvin, but I think I would have to seriously look at what I do. Do I believe that I should stay here and be unfairly taxed to fund a system which is completely out of control with welfare? I'd have to look at that. I'm not going to give a commitment either way. I mean, what my family does is up to them. But as you know, we've already lost some of our best people.
Yeah.
Many of them would like to come back, and a lot of our supporters are people who are currently living in places like Dubai, and you've got them going to all sorts of parts of the world now. Where countries are welcoming these most able people on earth and encouraging them to create wealth and contribute to their society, which they will do. I mean, do I want to live in a corrupt system which basically rewards indolence and punishes hard work? No, I don't. So I don't think most of the British people do either. So I'm not going to give a definitive answer to that question. It's a slightly impertinent question. I'm not intending to lose anyway. So hopefully, if I win, I'll be here changing the way we're governed.
Okay, well, let's look at this last question here, and this will probably be our last words between us. But he said, Rupert is a top man, but splitting the vote and allowing Labour to keep winning won't help the people. We are all on the same team, but splitting the vote is damaging our chances to get to number 10. Is that a fair analysis, or is that kind of...
Look, Kelvin, my view is no vote belongs to anybody. So by saying you're splitting the vote, you're sort of indicating that you think the vote belongs to somebody. Well, I don't think votes belong to anybody. Votes are earned. And, at the end of the day, if people decide that Restore Britain is offering the best option, they should vote for Restore Britain. I'm not into this vote splitting nonsense. And, I think in the fullness of time, before we get to an election, I don't personally think there will be an early general election. I think Labour have got such a huge majority.
They don't need to. They don't need to.
I suspect the Ghostbuster Burnham, as I call him, who doesn't seem to be challenged at all by this sort of adulating media, who seem to listen to his platitudes, take them in and applaud them, whereas anybody else, they would be actually questioning them. So look, I don't subscribe to this vote splitting business. I think we've got to see how things pan out. I personally think we've seen peak reform. I know that there's nothing inside Reform, and I think strategically Reform have made a very bad error in populating their party with what I call ex-Tory failures. And by ex-Tory failures, I mean Nadeem Zahawi, Nadine Dorries. I mean, even Jenrick and Braverman, they were involved, as Home Secretary and Immigration Minister during the time when all this immigration happened. So look, I don't think the British people want a reconstituted Tory party in Reform. All we need now is Boris to join them, and you've got the old cabinet back, Kelvin. I mean, nothing would have changed.
That's a good line. Look, Rupert, we've got to call it a day. You've had 1 hour of a fantastic party political broadcast on behalf of Restore, and actually you deserve it. You deserve it, man. Anybody who decides suddenly to start a party and gets down to the nitty-gritty of it, and that's what I admire about this. The fact is you are deep diving into it, and you aren't doing, as you pointed out to me, simply writing a headline and moving on and hoping the sales sell.
Well,
so
was
good luck
it
to you.
Was it you who came up with the headline that it's the Sun what done it, Kelvin? Was that one of yours?
It's the Sun what won it, actually. And
Sun what won it, was it?
It's Rupert what won it, that's for sure. Rupert, I've got to go. It's been great to chat to you. Thank you for your time, and good luck for the future, man. You don't need it, but
Thanks,
good luck
Kelvin.
to you. Well, there we are.
We've got Ellie there for a quick right to reply.
Yeah. Look, so what did you make of it? Now, first of all, you should tell, what's your politics?
I'm right-leaning.
You're right.
But I'm quite critical of Restore for many reasons.
How old are you, by the way?
And 18.
Right, okay, fine.
And I've met Rupert himself. I've had a conversation with him.
Okay.
I don't think Rupert is some evil, malicious man. However, I think the reason that he couldn't answer your question on what he will actually do for the country is because he doesn't even know what his own policies are as a party, because it's the young men around him that are the ones that are making the policy papers, and he's just the face of it. And I think he would actually admit that himself. He spoke about Rebecca Shepherd and how she wasn't allowed on Question Time. I think that was wrong. She should have been allowed to go on Question Time. However, when Rebecca Shepherd was asked to be interviewed by The Telegraph, for example, at Makerfield, Alistair, who works with Rupert, did not let her have any interviews whatsoever, and she didn't go to the hustings. So she could have had much more media coverage if she wanted to, yet the party stopped her from doing so. So yeah, I have a lot of, I'm very critical of Restore, and I think that Rupert should actually know what he's going to be doing for the country. And I think at the moment he is splitting the vote in many ways. And
So which way would you vote then if there was a general election?
I am not saying which way I would vote. I'm not completely decided. But I'm
Would you be voting
right-leaning. Oh, I'd have to think about that one. No, I would not be voting for Labour.
All right, we're going to Mark Littlewood.
Okay, fine. Well, look, guys, it's an unusual thing, whereas I can talk the hind legs of a donkey. And despite trying to talk, Rupert Lowe steamrolled straight through. Look, he has strong views. It's interesting that clearly the Reform Restore divide will remain, and that's that over. I'd like to see some of the parties talk about wealth creation, actually making money. Honestly, making money, everything's fine. We don't make money, we become Cuba, but without the hope, or even worse, Scotland, where it's quite clear that what they're going to do is allow mayors to put up local taxes. Imagine that. You're living in Northumberland and suddenly somebody said, you've made something of yourself, you're going to pay more money. Unbelievable thought process. Anyway, coming up, that's my lot. Coming up is Mark and his World Cuppery. Good morning, Mark, or just about midday, Mark. Can I ask you this? I go to bed. I'm not staying up until the whatever. I seem to have missed two of the great games of the tournament so far. The thing has exploded, hasn't it?
Absolutely brilliant. I didn't go to bed, Kelvin. The batch of three last night. I don't know if you got the chance to watch Brazil-Japan. That was early evening, right?
I did watch some of that, yeah.
Brazil versus Japan, Germany versus Paraguay, and Holland versus Morocco. Three absolutely brilliant games. Yeah. I have not had a wink of sleep, but the adrenaline is still keeping me alive. I should say, Kelvin, great interview with Rupert Lowe there. And I've got...
Well, hold on a second. I didn't say anything. Was that what made it great?
I didn't say it was a difficult interview. I just said it was a great interview, right? And I've got a great Rupert Lowe anecdote coming up on my show.
No, right. You're not going to tell it now.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
If you're a Rupert Lowe fan, stay tuned.
Okay. Do you know the odds? I simply don't know the odds of the Congo, of England against Congo. I am enormously fearful at the speed with which games are being played at and our ability to go slow, quick, slow. There's no quick. How do you feel about our chance? What are our chances against the Congo tomorrow night?
Oh, very good. Not nailed on there. And very good. I think you'd get about 7 or 8 to 1 on Congo to progress by some manner or means, right? So whether it's penalties or winning in 90 minutes or extra time. So very good. But you're right. Don't expect a pacey game tomorrow. It's not, I think, going to be up to the excitement levels that we saw last night or the excitement levels that we'll see this evening. We've got 3 excellent matches.
Go on, what are the games tonight? Saying the games.
The one, if you are a night owl and don't need any sleep, stay up for Mexico versus Ecuador, because if England get past Congo, they will play the winner of that game, Mexico or Ecuador, probably Mexico in Mexico City. That would be the toughest assignment yet. We've also got Norway versus Ivory Coast. We are insistent on calling them Ivory Coast. They've tried to rebrand as Côte d'Ivoire, but this is an English language channel, so Ivory Coast they are. And then the heavily fancied France, not La France, France. This is an English language channel.
La Belle France.
Against Sweden. So it's France, Sweden, big underdogs there. But you never know. What we're seeing in the knockout games, anything could happen. No game has been settled in the 90 normal minutes. Canada got through in stoppage time. Brazil got through in stoppage time. Paraguay got through on penalties. Morocco got through on penalties.
Brilliant.
Every game on a knife edge. We will review and preview the lot in my show, Kelvin.
Good stat, actually, that. I hadn't had it put like that. You're quite right. Well, yes, I look forward to it, man. Good to speak to you. And I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, well, everybody, there we are. It's this show has been going on about half an hour, and already we've had a major political figure. And Rupert Lowe is a major political figure. Even although his numbers may be small, his effect seems to be huge. I can't imagine the energy that's required to create a political party when you're, 67 or something. Anyway, fantastic. See you tomorrow. Look forward to it. Have a bit more humour tomorrow, and a little less of me nodding in agreement and a little more of me speaking, which is probably one of the reasons why the audience went up in the last hour. All right, good to speak to you. See you soon.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes. In politics, Labour leadership frontrunner Andy Burnham delivered a major speech outlining plans for radical devolution. He pledged a No 10 North nerve centre in Manchester to rebalance power away from Westminster, drive regional growth, tackle the lost generation of NEETs by empowering mayors, and deliver the biggest shift in decision-making in modern times. Cricket fans are mourning England captain Ben Stokes's shock retirement from international test cricket, citing exhaustion and strained relations. The Princess of Wales completed the Three Peaks Challenge in 24 hours for charity, signalling strong recovery. Resident doctors have accepted a pay deal, ending strikes. Record June heat continues to grip parts of the UK, with calls for action on extreme weather. Other notes include asylum process reforms and ongoing economic debates. Later's Tigers.
Well, here we are. What a night of football. Absolutely unbelievable. If you didn't stay up all night like me, have no fear. We'll take you through absolutely everything you missed. Make sure you watch the highlights or even the full games if you can. Absolutely fantastic. Japan are out. I'm a bit sorry about that. The Dutch are out. Meh. And the Germans are out. Absolutely fantastic. I think Germany and Japan, it's probably the last night's game count as their worst aggregate defeat in any sort of sport or thing since 1945. Sorry to see Japan go. Aren't they everybody's second team now? But maybe Paraguay will pick up that mantle, or Morocco, who I have been tipping as a dark horse from the start. They get through. And on this show, we are going to give you all of the facts and stats you need to try and pilot your way through the knockout stages of the World Cup. You would think it's simple now because we've got rid of all of those algorithms around the group stages. It's just do or die on each and every match. And as I was just saying to Kelvin, no match has been decided in the first 90 minutes. It's either been won in stoppage time or had to go to extra time and penalties. Absolutely brilliant, blistering entertainment. Let's hope tonight is as good. And I say we're going to give you the real facts and stats you need because there's an awful lot of mysticism going around. Check out, I think we've got clip number 1. This was a Japanese guy who seemed to feel very confident that by spinning the wheel, he was sure that Japan were going to win. Let's see the Japanese wheel spinning trick. Clip number. So, what do you think of that? It gets smaller and smaller. He flicks it off. Obviously, Japan didn't win. Bit unlucky. Put in a decent performance. 1-0 up at the break. The Germans seemed pretty cocky as well. I'm not going to say this is mysticism, but I am going to say it's a lot of cockiness. Let's have a look at these German fans who seem to think that they could eat the other great nations of the World Cup alive. Please show clip number 2. Cocky Germans. Well, they're out, defeated on penalties. Joy of joys. What a way to go. To join me to chew through all of those results, bombing down the right wing on the overlap is, despite his Pompey allegiances, my good friend Paul Cox. Don't know if he's had any sleep either. Paul, what on earth did you make of that last night? What a brilliant set of games.
Wow! Again, I just contributed to the cultural appropriation there, doing the Japanese. I think it's important that we bring it back, Mark. If this isn't a safe space for cultural appropriation, I don't know what is. Last night was incredible, genuinely incredible. I watched 2 full games, fell asleep during the 3rd game, and then watched the highlights this morning. Nobody won in 90 minutes, which is also incredible. We are really at the knife edge, exciting point of this World Cup now, and reputations have gone out the window, Mark.
Yeah. So look, let's start with Brazil, Japan. I really do feel sorry for Japan. And it seems, I don't know about this, I've got no evidence to back it up, but just my feeling is they're now kind of most people's second team, right? They've never won a knockout game, but they are getting better with each and every tournament. God knows why they don't win the Asia Cup every single goddamn time. They looked great. They're still a team in development, but I think in years to come, you could see Japan as a semi-finalist, possibly even a winner of the tournament. This is a nation on the up. They go 1-0 ahead. Brazil, good team. Probably not the greatest Brazilian team we've ever seen. They have got Vini Jr. up front. That Martinelli gets a last-minute heartbreak winner. What do you make of that? I mean, great game of football. Probably, I guess most people in England, possibly most people in South America, wanted Japan to put one over Brazil, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm with you on this with regards to Japan and their fans. They're great. They tidy up after themselves, which is fantastic. I've even started leaving mess around the house, and a Japanese fan occasionally has come in and tidied it up for me. They are efficient to a fault, Mark, and they have performed very well. And like you say, I think there is an opportunity now, I think, for Japan to just keep on going. We've seen this from them. They have come from sort of medium obscurity to compete in the final stages, and most teams would expect to go out against Brazil. Every team in the world fears Brazil to some degree. And Japan, though they didn't actually threaten to win the game as such, they could well have done. And Brazil were lucky to go through in added time rather than forcing extra time. So I think all in all, the result was right. A bit unfortunate for Japan, but I think things are to come from Japan in the future, Mark.
Let's have a look at the other two games, Germany, Paraguay. Now, credit to you, Cox, from when we asked yesterday, what is in Cox's box? You gave us the lowdown on Paraguay and you told us how brilliantly defensively organised they are and their very strong record on penalties. If you go back to the 2011 Copa America, they didn't win a single group stage game but got through. They then won 3 knockout games without winning in normal or extra time, all on penalty kicks to get all the way to the final. And by God, they ground it out yesterday, didn't they? Fantastic defensive display. I mean, absolutely brilliant stuff. And I kind of felt, you know, when you get that spider senses tingling, oh, geez, I'm going for the mysticism now. But my spider sense was tingling that if they got it to penalties, they'd win it. Controversial German goal ruled out by Tar, who then actually blasted his penalty over the bar, Gabriel style against PSG. But wonderful. I mean, I probably woke up everybody else in this hotel when Paraguay actually won it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And we were communicating via WhatsApp during this game because it was still within sort of reasonable contacting people hours. And it was great. It was so good that actually the commentary was all about how bad Germany were. And I think it's worth pointing out that in that first half in particular, and until Germany equalised against Paraguay, of course, Paraguay going 1-0 up, they were nowhere to be seen. Because they do naturally seem to be filled with hubris, Germany. It just seems to be something that's innate within them. And perhaps they feel the same about us. I don't know. I noticed that their flags of the shark eating didn't include England, so they've dismissed us already. Well, it doesn't matter. We've stayed in the competition longer than them. But they did seem to mooch around the field as if it was expected of them and they would win, etc. And I think I said to you, last message I said to you and the team, excellent team, by the way. You wouldn't believe how phenomenal the team behind Mark and I is. It's incredible. Thanks, guys. I said to the team that this is going to extra time. I did have a suspicion at that point that it would be penalties. It was penalties, but Paraguay thoroughly deserved that win. Germany technically are the better team, but they just didn't show it at all last night. There was mixes. There was glimpses of it occasionally, but it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I forgot our slides. You said this is a great show for cultural appropriation, also a great show for national stereotypes. So if we can pull up slide 1 and then slide 2, we're showing the teams in there. So that was the Brazil result, 2-1, corking match. Japan nearly pulled it off. Germany, Paraguay, Germany out on penalties. First time they've lost a penalty shootout since 1976. When they lost the final 5-3, I think it was, on penalties to Czechoslovakia. And then let's wrap up with Holland versus Morocco. The Dutch in tears. Morocco were fantastic. Once I'd seen the first 10 minutes of them against Brazil, Paul, I think these guys are actual dark horses to win the entire thing. They had 70% possession against Holland. And they got a last minute equaliser. This is Ivory Coast, Norway. Go back to slide 3. We'll have a look at the Ivory Coast, Norway later. They won on penalties, but as I saw somebody just saying in the chat, in both the Paraguay game and in this game, the penalties were a total mess, right? Paraguay needed 3 penalties. They had 3 chances to score and win. My God, Morocco went behind. They missed their first penalty. They managed to squirm one under the goalkeeper. Biscuit Face says the German penalties were dreadful too. Somehow or other, we got a 3-2 winner. Morocco are through. They face Canada in the next round, which I don't think is too difficult an assignment. Could they go all the way, Paul?
Yes, they can, and it's not like they haven't done it before. I think they reached the semi-finals in the last competition. We shouldn't underestimate them at all. Obviously, Holland, their reputation is quite a big one. You and I spoke yesterday about their reputation since Ruud Gullit, Van Basten, etc. And they've lent a little bit into that in recent years because they've not actually produced anything. And last night they didn't produce a great deal either. They were kind of unlucky to go out on penalties. The keeper made some great saves towards the end of the game. And with regards to the penalties, he did make a great save, but simultaneously made the biggest blunder probably of that game, which was that it seemed to creep under him and then he backheeled it into the back of the net. It was agonising if you're a Holland fan.
Yeah, it was pretty grim. But Morocco deserved it. right? There's no two ways about that. And I think Paraguay deserved it. You're right, Germany are the better team, but one of the best defensive displays. I just want to say about the Paraguay manager, I've looked up his career, Gustavo Alfara, a defensive genius. He was the manager of Arsenal between 2006 and 2008, not Arsenal in North London, I hasten to add, an Arsenal team in Buenos Aires. He's previously managed Costa Rica and Ecuador, and he is so defensively minded that he literally does not celebrate when Paraguay score a goal. He's already thinking ahead to how he needs to reformat the team in order to protect that one goal lead, park the bus. So he pulled off a tactical masterclass against the Germans. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Paul, we're going to be back with you a bit later to profile. I think your profile today is the Ivory Coast. You're going to be telling us all about them a bit later. And when we also ask what's in Cox's box, you've got a story about defunct nations. We've gone through the files and we think there are 8 nations, countries, who have competed in the World Cup in the past, but now no longer exist, have at least changed their name or are a different size. Really interested in the chat whether you can get any or all of the 8. Paul will be back later in the show to go through those 8. But I've now got a very, very special guest, and I'm fascinated to talk to this chap. Kieran Maguire is a football finance expert. I had the great pleasure of being with him on BBC Radio 4's Moral Maze a few weeks ago, just on the eve of the World Cup. What this man doesn't know about football finance is not worth knowing. Kieran, it's great to have you with us. Where are you today? Are you up in Liverpool, down in Brighton? I know you're a big Brighton and Hove Albion fan. And how are you being able to stay up all night to watch these World Cup games, or are you catching up on them in the morning?
I tend to catch up in the morning. It's easier. It gives me something to do whilst I'm updating my spreadsheets as well, which is sort of a non-stop activity. I'm down south at present, but I'm popping up to Liverpool on Thursday. We've got some commitments there at the university, so I'll be dealing with those.
Now, this is, you wrote the seminal book, The Price of Football, which I've read. But what I want you to take me through, Kieran, and our viewers as well, is I think most football fans have a reasonably good grasp. They won't know the detail that you know, but a reasonably good grasp of how, say, the English Football League and the Premier League work. That if you're in the Premier League, you get tons of TV money, even more if you're in the Champions League. The bigger teams have bigger stadia, often charge more for tickets than the smaller clubs. Sell much more merchandise, the money flows in, vast amounts of it is spent on player salaries because you've got to put the talent on the pitch. Quite hard to make a profit out of football, perhaps not enough money in grassroots investment, but people know how it works. I have no clue how the finances of the World Cup works. I'm told this is a $15 or $20 billion tournament, but who's paying that money and where's it going? Can you give us an ABC talk through of the finances of a World Cup?
Well, FIFA are budgeting for around about $11 to $12 billion from the 2026 World Cup. An awful lot of that will come from television. It's an expanded tournament. Remember, we've got 48 teams, so therefore there's over 100 matches. So the tournament itself is longer than anything we've seen in the past, and the broadcasters are prepared to pay for that. When you take into consideration the hydration breaks, I think it's fair to say that those, in reality, as far as the American broadcasters are concerned, are opportunities to enhance their opportunity to sell more commercials, and that's increased the money coming in. So over half of the money is coming in from broadcasting. We then have the senior sponsors of the FIFA World Cup, and that's the likes of Bank of America, McDonald's, Lenovo, Hisense, and so on. So they will have paid substantial sums. And the third element, and I think this is the one which has provoked the most debate, is through match day. It's through ticket sales. There's an awful lot of tickets to sell for the tournament. According to FIFA, they've been hugely oversubscribed. And then the pricing, I think, has irritated some fans who have followed their countries up and down through the qualifying tournaments, and now having to to pay out substantial sums for this. So you put all of those three together, that takes us to around about $11 billion. Of that, probably around about $1.5 billion will go back to the participating countries in the form of appearance money and prize money. The winners will only get $40 million. That contrasts to Chelsea getting around about $100 million from winning the Club World Cup last season. But this tournament is not about money. If you're the country that wins, then you become immortal in the eyes of football fans, just as we have done with Jeff Hurst and Bobby Charlton and so on from 1966. So a lot of money will be left over from the tournament, and then it will be distributed by FIFA to the 200 plus members of FIFA as a federation.
That's really interesting. What about the players? Look, sorry, I'm playing, the world's smallest violin here. I don't really care that much about how much Harry Kane makes out of it, or Mbappe, but what do they get? Because they would be earning, I don't know, £250,000 a week potentially from their clubs. If you're one of the players, either at the top rank or I don't know, on the bench for New Zealand, do you get anything at all, or is it just your flights and hotels covered? Or for some of the smaller teams, is this payday? You're fighting away in the Portuguese second or third divisionals. I mean, and now this is your moment in the limelight, and you're getting big bucks to appear. What do the players get out of it?
Well, it very much varies from country to country. If we take the England team, for example, they are entitled to a match day fee and a remuneration from the English FA. However, the tradition is amongst the English players that they put that money into a pool, and that goes out that's distributed to charities. So they are not earning money from being footballers. At the same time, they will generate money from the commercial pool, because we have seen many England players on adverts from the commercial partners of both the tournament and independently. So that's how the money goes. Now, as far as the clubs are concerned, because if you think about it, the nations are borrowing the players who are full-time employees. They're borrowing those players from the clubs. FIFA pay a flat fee per player per day. It gives you, I think it's 14 days before the tournament commences until around about 3 or 4 days after your team is eliminated. And that can be very lucrative. There's certainly some clubs who are getting, I think it works out as around about £7,000 a day, or $7,000 a day, should I say, from FIFA per player. So if you're right, if you are a player in Cape Verde and you've got a local club, they will be hoping that they contributed greater to the tournament than perhaps they did, and so on. So that's the way it works, and that's whether you're Erling Haaland or the Irish player that's playing for Cape Verde. His local team back in Dublin, they will be picking up this $7,000 a day.
Wow, well, that's not bad. I think is it Lopez from Shamrock Rovers, I think, is that player.
Oh, right.
But yeah. I think there was also a New Zealand player, I know, unsurprisingly, they went out of the tournament early, who plays for Braintree Town, right? This could be a bit of a payday for Braintree Town. I don't know what their annual turnover is, but those sort of bucks come in quite useful if you're way down in the lower leagues, right?
Absolutely. And that's why you're seeing, and it's fantastic, first of all, for a club such as Braintree Town or Shamrock Rovers to have representation in the FIFA World Cup, and the clubhouse will be, I can assure you, will be full, and they'll be cheering them on. I was in Dublin at the weekend because I was going there for a concert, and the Shamrock Rovers link was, I can assure you, was being jumped up and down on and celebrated all over. Because it does increase the romance of football, and I'm sort of at the financial side of things, which can be it's certainly very dull, as am I, and secondly, it's very forensic in terms of its approach. But none of us fell in love with football for balance sheets or PSR or anything of that nature. So to see these sort of David versus Goliath stories in terms of players from disparate backgrounds, in terms of where they're playing their game currently, I think is absolutely fantastic, and reminds ourselves of why it is the global game and the global success that we love so much.
So it's all working well then, right? We should give Infantino a slap on the back. Tons of money's pouring in. Some of the games have been absolutely fantastic to watch, and the Braintree Towns and the Shamrock Rovers are doing well out of it. And I don't know, presumably some of this money makes it down to grassroots level. What's not to love? I've just put up a straw man for you here, I think, Kieran, but how would you do it differently? You're obviously, I think, like most football fans, but you from a position of incredible knowledge, a massive critic of FIFA. But from what you've just painted, all seems to be rosy in the garden, right?
Well, if I was to do it better, I'd make it more accessible for more people. There are many England fans who would have loved to have got across there and to be able to support the side who were priced out of the event. The fact that it became an opportunity for, as they say in the States, scalping. Lots of people applied for tickets with the view of putting them back up for resale. They've no interest in what they refer to as soccer. They've got no interest in the beautiful game that we all love so much. It was merely a financial transaction. And if you take a look at the prices on the secondary markets, where FIFA have appointed themselves as the official ticket tout of the 2026 World Cup, and they're taking a 30% commission, it's been very lucrative. Now, if the aim of football is, you say, well, it's part of the broader entertainment industry, and the entertainment industry is entitled to maximise revenue and profits, which it is, there's no doubt about that, then you could argue that it's a logical thing to do. If you're a football romantic, if you've done Hartlepool away on a Tuesday night, my first date with my wife was Hartlepool away, ironically.
You're such a romantic. What a Casanova.
Yeah, I knew she was a keeper. We lost 2-1. I sulked all the way home, didn't say a word, and she still went out on a second date. So I'm a very, very fortunate guy. Then I think there's a difference, and it's noticeable. And there's no love between FIFA and UEFA, the European Federation. They've already said there will be no hydration breaks in the 2028 competition, which is taking place here in a couple of years, and many of us are already looking forward to. They've already said that the prices will be far lower. You could have done the same in FIFA's shoes and made $10 billion instead of $11 billion have prices which would have allowed kids who are being priced out, families who wanted to attend. If you're going with mum, dad, 2 kids, then you're not going to get much change out of £2,000 or £3,000, and that's before, of course, flights and accommodation and so on. So I think it could have been done without an eye on just trying to rinse fans as much as possible. Equally, I'm fully aware of how the Super Bowl works, and having attended American sports events myself, I'm used to the eye-watering prices. I did have opportunity to have tickets for all 3 of England's games in the group stages, but on a teacher's salary, I took a look at my wife, and she says, "Well, if you want to go, you can do." But we both know what the look's like, don't we, Mark?
Yeah. I think a good number of football fans know that look well. Final question on that, on affordability. I don't know what it would cost for an average England ticket, and obviously if they go deep into the tournament, the prices will go up. I know there's a fear that there will be thousands of empty seats at Atlanta for the Congo game, so we'll see whether dynamic pricing works. But are you worried? I mean, I'm guessing it's maybe about $400, $500 for a seat at an England game, and I'm the ballpark correct?
If I could get one for $400 or $500, I'd be there in a heartbeat. Most of them are going for more than 1,000 at present. Now, we did see yesterday, sort of in the last 24 hours before kickoff, I think for the Germany game, prices came down on the secondary market. They were still substantially higher than the original list prices. And if England do get to the final, then the sky's the limit as far as some prices are concerned. They will be in the many, many thousands. And some people who have those resources will say it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to see England in the World Cup final, and I'll do it, and I'll deal with the consequences afterwards. But it does mean that you're reducing those England fans that have done Liechtenstein away, that have been to Albania on a Wednesday night match for a Europa League match, and so on. Right, a Nations League match. Those are the people that are being disadvantaged from this.
Yeah. Last question for you, Kieran, because you obviously touched on the ticket prices, and they are eye-watering. You're right; it does seem to be there now in the kind of Super Bowl, NFL playoff category. And I, for one, would much prefer there was a loyalty system for Team England and others, that if you have tracked across the globe for largely irrelevant England games, surely you should be on a priority list. But isn't it also the geographical format of the tournament, right? That if, let's say, Italy were hosting the World Cup, might be the only way they could qualify, right, Pooch? But if they were hosting the World Cup, and I don't know, England's first two group games were in Rome, and then the last group game was in Milan, and then the next knockout round in Turin. Well, this is all a bit manageable. But the minute you've got to go, what's it been? Dallas, Boston, Atlanta, Mexico City, on extremely expensive flights, hotel prices 3 times as usual, even like the short rail trip, they've sort of jacked up. I mean, almost the ticket price is a small proportion of the overall outlay if you're having to do all that kind of cross-continental travel, right? Shouldn't it just go back to being in one country and try and get, you know, you playing all your games in one city or a couple of cities next to each other, Manchester and Liverpool, for example? That would really help the fans, even if you ignored the astronomical ticket prices, right?
I can absolutely understand that argument. You know, I've been fortunate to be at a few World Cups, and some of the countries are very large. You've only got to look at South Africa in 2010 and Russia 2018. We had Brazil in 2014. These are huge countries. If you think that's bad, just wait until 2030 when matches are taking place in South America, North Africa, and Europe.
Yeah, Kieran, it's been absolutely fascinating. We must get you on for a future show. There's million more questions I want to ask you. Are you basically enjoying it? The time difference notwithstanding. I mean, it has been in terms of the quality and excitement of football, especially the last 3 matches, off the scale as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's football. I can remember every World Cup going back to 1970, being at school, the excitement in the playground, and so on. I'm too old to collect the stickers, but I still collect the stickers. So yeah, that sort of sums up where I am as far as the World Cup is concerned. Good man.
We've got to do got need. I've got a box full of panini right in front of me, Kieran. I'll let you know the stickers I'm looking for. I'm still looking for a Harry Kane. If you've got a spare, I'll swap it with you. Kieran, it's been a delight. Thanks so much. What insight. That's what you need to know about the lubricant that makes football work. You know, money makes the world go round, and it makes the sport go round too. Listen, I thought it was worth keeping Kieran on for a bit longer, but we're now going to go to Edward Hughes with the news, and then we're going to ask, what has Cox got in his box today? Here's Edward Hughes with the news. Edward's gone on strike, or has he been sent off?
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes. In politics, Labour leadership frontrunner Andy Burnham delivered a major speech outlining plans for radical devolution. He pledged a No 10 North nerve centre in Manchester to rebalance power away from Westminster, drive regional growth, tackle the lost generation of NEETs by empowering mayors, and deliver the biggest shift in decision-making in modern times. Cricket fans are mourning England captain Ben Stokes's shock retirement from international test cricket, citing exhaustion and strained relations. The Princess of Wales completed the Three Peaks Challenge in 24 hours for charity, signalling strong recovery. Resident doctors have accepted a pay deal, ending strikes. Record June heat continues to grip parts of the UK, with calls for action on extreme weather. Other notes include asylum process reforms and ongoing economic debates. Later's Tigers.
Thanks for Edward Hughes with the news, and I'm glad that after getting his yellow card, £10 from Simon Kilford. Thanks, Simon. I hope you're enjoying the show. Always good to have you with us. Regular viewer there, I think. Mike gave Edward Hughes a yellow card or a warning for wearing an Hawaiian shirt, so it's good to see him suited and booted again. I agree with Nick Knack. They should do the hydration breaks Gaza dentist chair style to liven things up. Might stop the booing from fans, probably with alcohol, not water, as well. Let's bring back in my wingman, Paul Cox to ask, what have we got in Cox's box today? Look, yesterday couldn't have gone better on the Paraguay profile, right? Learned a lot about Paraguay, but you kind of also nailed the tactics of it. Tell us all about the Ivory Coast. And for those of you who are watching on Kelvin's show area, I'm going to lob in a Rupert Lowe anecdote to do with the Ivory Coast. But Paul, over to you. What's in your box?
Wow, my box is absolutely stuffed today, Mark. There is so much to talk about when it comes to the Ivory Coast, but I'm going to consolidate it into juicy morsels for us all to enjoy. So we're going to call it the Ivory Coast and not Côte d'Ivoire, by the way. First, I want to get that off my chest immediately because there hasn't been a rebrand, and it's not political in any way, but for many years, since 1985, in fact, they've been trying to rename the Ivory Coast to Côte d'Ivoire, but this is an English-speaking channel, as Mark has pointed out many times, and all Côte d'Ivoire means is the Ivory Coast. So we're going to carry on calling it the Ivory Coast, and the Ivory Coast is the home of the largest church in the world, you might be surprised to hear. The Basilica of Our Lady of Peace in Yamoussoukro was built in 4 years between 1985 and 1989, and by comparison, the church in Barcelona, the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, took 145 years to build. It's amazing what you can do with incredibly cheap labour in 4 years, Mark. Didier Drogba, the international football team, helped to end the Ivory Coast Civil War. Now, I was going to save this one, but I'm going to go straight into it because time is of the essence, and this is an absolutely fantastic nugget. So, after Didier Drogba captained the Ivory Coast to qualify for their first ever World Cup in 2005, he gave an emotional and memorable television speech from the dressing room, kneeling with his teammates, and he appealed directly to his nation. He said, Ivorians from the north, south, centre and west, he dismissed the east apparently, we have proved that all Ivorians can coexist and play together with a shared aim. Please lay down your weapons and organise elections. Sounds like the sort of thing that you or I might say in our political commentary, Mark, but that was Didier Drogba in 2005 in the dressing room, speaking to his nation from the dressing room with his speech. And the speech became a powerful symbol of national unity during the country's civil war conflict. While it did not by itself, I should add, end the civil war, it is widely credited with helping build public momentum for peace, and a ceasefire followed shortly afterwards. That is incredible. I don't think we're going to beat that as a statistic for either the Ivory Coast or anybody else. Now, in talking a civil war within the Ivory Coast, they're not unadverse to it, and they've experienced civil war since the 2000s. And there was a failed coup in 2000 which split the country between the north and the south, leading to years of conflict before the peace was restored. Much thanks to Didier. There was a disputed presidential election in 2010. I'm leaning in a little bit to the political side of Ivory Coast here, but I think it's important because it shapes the nation and it shapes the type of characters we see from the Ivory Coast. And both Laurent Gbagbo and Alassane Ouattara, which is not how you pronounce it, but it's just how I'm going to do it. This is an English-speaking channel. Claimed victory, triggering a short but intense conflict, not a shot. Ultimately, Ouattara won and took office and has remained a dominant figure in Ivorian politics ever since. As with many African states, it is quite dictatorial, shall we say. Now, let's get into some more light-hearted facts with regards to the Ivory Coast. Their keeper, Alban Lafont, was born in Burkina Faso, where his mum was the international handballer and a member of parliament. I guess as an MP, she was no stranger to balls-ups, Mark. A talented team, they were rated 34th in the world, but perhaps lacking the presence of past superstars like Didier Drogba and Yaya Toure. They are now sort of considered a moderate team within that region. But they've scored the most goals and didn't concede any in African qualifying. So maybe they're superstars in waiting, Mark.
There you go. That was great. Cox's box was pretty full with Ivory Coast stuff here. I noticed in the chat as well some very, very sound points. Have a Pint said, of course they're called Ivory Coast, but that was because of all the ivory they got from elephants. There are no elephants there anymore, apparently. So should we just call them Coast? We just call them Coast.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. That's the biggest fact, actually, about the Ivory Coast. And I should have mentioned right at the top, the Ivory Coast are nicknamed Les Elephants, which, of course, in English just means the elephant. And we should have mentioned that. They did actually win the African Nation Cup 3 times in 92, 2015 and 2023. So they're not to be sniffed at, Mark.
Not to be sniffed at, but no elephants there anymore, so maybe we should just call them Coast rather than Ivory Coast.
Yes.
But then I don't think there are that many lions in England, and we're called the 3 Lions, so, you know, you might
they're all in the zoo, I hope.
Now, I'm going to tell you, Paul, my anecdote. I promised this at the tail end of Kelvin show about Rupert Lowe and the Ivory Coast. So my beloved Southampton, your arch enemies, you'll notice, though, you very graciously accepted that because Charles Miller of Southampton was the man who exported football to Brazil, that it was perfectly reasonable for Southampton to claim Brazil's trophies, all 5 stars. Can you see there on my Brazil shirt? They should really be on the Southampton crest, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm wearing a Southampton cap, but the 5 stars of Brazil that rightly belong to the Southampton end of Hampshire. But this is what happened back in 2003 with Didier Drogba, possibly the Ivorians' best player of all time. He was available for a transfer of £2.5 million as a 24-year-old in 2003, was about to sign for Southampton. Gordon Strachan, then the manager, wanted him. Rupert Lowe, then the Southampton chairman, was only willing to pay £1.5 million. We lost the deal. He went elsewhere. The rest is history. And according to Strachan's autobiography, Rupert Lowe said there was no point in signing Didier Drogba. He was just a poor man's James Beattie. No offence to James Beattie, he did a good job at Southampton. But I think it's fair to say Didier Drogba is not a poor man's James Beattie. So that was my Ivorian Rupert Lowe joke. I like Rupert Lowe, by the way, and he did get us the new stadium, St Mary's Stadium, but nevertheless, that was a financial error. Didier Drogba for £2.5 million to the Saints. What a joy that would have been.
We should have asked Kelvin, sorry to interrupt, Mark, but I've got to say this. We should have asked Kelvin to ask that of Rupert Lowe because of all the things that he has said over the years, including very recently, I'd say that is in the top 3 most controversial and potentially the biggest mistake he's ever made.
Yeah, very, very, very good point. Next time Rupert's on, I'll super chat to make damn sure that that's put to him. Paul, we're going to come back to you a bit later with this thing about defunct nations. We've had 8 places that have competed in a World Cup in the past, but no longer exist, or at least no longer exist under their sort of present name. Can you identify in the chat what those ones are? I can't help it being a scummer. No, you're right, Lou. Absolutely right. But defunct nation now, and then we'll get to a bit of internecine Hampshire warfare. But let's bring in my next guest, the senior press officer at the Prosperity Institute. Joe, great to have you with us. Hello, Squire. How are you? Oh, no, we're struggling on Joe's audio at the moment. I think you can hear us, but we can't hear you. So try and say a few words for us, Joe. Yeah, that's not working. So let's see if we can get Pooch to sort that out.
Joe has muted himself. Joe,
you've muted yourself, apparently, Joe. So
guest has muted themselves. I don't know.
How does he unmute himself? At the bottom of the screen, you should see a little microphone just beneath the yellow bar, I think, that's got mute on it, and he says he's not muted himself. All right, Pooch, I'm going to let you try and sort out Joe's technical issues, and we'll bring in Paul back again until we can actually get Joe so we can hear him rather than communicating through the medium of mime or modern dance, which doesn't work particularly well.
Poor Joe.
Here's the thing. Defunct nations, right? Who has competed in a World Cup and no longer exists, or at least no longer exists under the same name. We think we've got 8 of them. I don't know in the chat if any of you have been able to identify any of them. Cyprus, don't think they've ever competed in a World Cup. Did Malta have a football team? Possibly, but I don't think they've ever competed in a World Cup. Should say here, I'm talking about the World Cup finals, right? Not the qualifying rounds. Actually getting to the tournament. USSR, Bumblebee is correct. The Soviet Union, tick. We've got one. East Germany, another one. Bumblebee on an absolute roll. Zaire.
Biscuit face.
Tick.
Now that is a great shout from Biscuit
right.
Face. Zaire, I would have said, was in the top 2 most difficult to guess. Correct, Biscuit Face.
Zaire are now the Democratic Republic of Congo, England's next opponents. Czechoslovakia, tick. They are now the Czech Republic, or for the Wokarati, they are Czechia. Yugoslavia, tick. Got
Tick.
another one. Really good. Yugoslavia, done. West Germany, yep, correct. West Germany, they are treated, I think, as the successor country, right? So Germany are considered to have all West Germany's previous trophies. It's not like they started from scratch. And I think Russia, obviously banned from international sport at the moment, are treated as the successor to
so some lists will not include West Germany for that very fact, Mark, but they are still a defunct team. So we must include, and we are pedants here, we must include West Germany alongside East Germany because they no longer exist, and they have indeed competed and won disastrously. Won the World Cup.
Yes, exactly. I think East Germany beat West Germany in the 1974 World Cup. Have I got that right? That was a real grudge match. Made England-Scotland look like a game amongst pussies. I think East Germany pulled off a surprise win in 1974. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Interestingly, as a result of that match, each East German resident was given an extra loaf of bread. That's not true, but I thought I'd just leave it in there anyway.
Right, there you go. There you go.
I was just looking at Mark's face. I was thinking,
we have a casual relationship
seriously.
with the truth on this show, as I promised you. All the facts, peer-reviewed, bottomed out, and Cox comes out with that sort of nonsense. But there is one that we said Yugoslavia, but there's another kind of Yugoslav-related one. Okay, bit obscure this. So I'm going to go for it. Is it Serbia and Montenegro?
Serbia and Montenegro is on the list. Double tick for Mark Littlewood there. But there is one that's missing.
World Cup, but now they're Serbia and Montenegro are separate, right? So they are defunct as well. And I can't get the last one. Tell us what the last one is, Paul.
Well, the last one is Dutch East Indies, which appeared in the 1938 World Cup, which was the first Asia team to qualify, Mike. An incredible statistic. But I have one other, which I've been keeping secret from you and the production team. The reason I've been keeping it secret, this is a fact. I mean, I did sort of create a little bit of distrust a minute ago by coming up with the communism joke. However, Austria are a team that still exists, but Austria... This is for extra points. If anyone got this, extra Cox points, okay? Austria qualified for the 1938 World Cup, but never played because the country was annexed by Nazi Germany. So they never played after qualifying for the 1938 World Cup, but then came back and played later on, as they are in this competition.
Great. Well, I've got another one then, if that's going to count.
Oh, no.
South Yemen qualified for a World Cup back in the day, but had merged with North Yemen to become Yemen and didn't compete as South Yemen, but they weren't even there. So there you go. That was pretty hardcore, nervy trivia. But the Dutch East Indies only played one game, didn't they? And they lost 6-0. So they're defunct and are likely to keep the record of the worst team ever in a World Cup final.
6-0, absolutely correct. I don't know if we've got Joe back. If we
I think we've got Joe back, Paul. So thanks for what we've had from what was in Cox's box. I'll be back with you shortly, Paul, to look forward to tonight's matches. But let's see if the wonderful Joe can rejoin us. Right now, how's the audio go?
Is that better?
Yeah, that's a lot better. Thank you. I don't know what went wrong there.
Sincerest apologies. It's a new
I don't know whether it was your end.
Acquainted with these laptops.
Yeah, I don't know if it was your end, our end. So, Joe, thanks so much for joining us.
No worries at all.
Look, as you might have picked up on the show, we are extremely strict on matters of pronunciation on this show. So
Correct.
it is not Paris Saint-Germain, it's Paris Saint-Germain. It is not Milan, it's Milan. It's not Barcelona, it's Barcelona. You're a Millwall fan, right? So that's pretty easy to pronounce. But I need to know, have you muted yourself again or not? I need to know whether you are Joe Dinage or Joseph Dinage. Which is it? What's the correct pronunciation?
Dinage, I believe, is the correct pronunciation. My grandfather very pompously tried to Frankify it to, I think, fit in a local Rotary club. But Dinage is the correct option.
That is really interesting because I've got a theory. I've got a theory that the leader of Reform UK is called Nigel Farage rather than Nigel Farage, right?
I've long suspected this, and him and I actually went to the same school. So there is some sort of, maybe there's some kind of karmic connection between these sort of pseudo-Huguenot names and our education. I don't know, but you could be right. It may not just be conspiracy.
Anyway, I'm not going to ask you about Nigel Farage's school days. I'll have lawyers all over me within a goddamn second, right? But, Joe, you're a Millwall fan. Your lot got kicked out of the playoffs on the field. My lot, Southampton, got kicked out of the playoffs in a tribunal. Have you overcome your grief from that? And what are you making of the World Cup so far? Are you staying up late into the night to watch it, just watching the England games? That would be a bad move, by the way. The England games are the most boring. How much of it have you been able to digest? And has it allowed you to get over the PTSD of Millwall not making it to the Premier League for the first time?
Well, I don't think there are enough therapists in the world to cure me of my PTSD from that devastating playoff knockout. We had such a good season, and for it to be snatched from us by the Hull City Tigers in such grotesque form was shocking. But what have I made of the World Cup so far? You're right, the England games are horrifically boring, it seems. I mean, we topped our group, but that was expected. We didn't exactly have the stiffest competition, on paper at least. And until recently, I was finding the whole thing quite dull until the Germans got kicked out. Remarkable.
Yeah, that was utterly joyous, wasn't it? I mean,
it really was.
Great, absolutely superb backline display. Let's have a look. I mean, it went down pretty well in my hotel room when Paraguay won, but let's have a look at clip number 8. Which I think will show you how it went down in Asunción in Paraguay. Let's have a look at clip number 8. Yeah, it was pretty much like that in my hotel room. I don't know whether how were you shouting out when that final Paraguay penalty went in, Joe? That was joyous seeing the Germans not just lose but lose on penalties. Absolutely fantastic, right?
It was an example of pure karmic bliss. It was a long time coming for the Germans. It's good that they've had a taste of their own medicine now, and good on the Paraguayans. Who can blame them for celebrating? I can only wish that we were having the same celebrations in England, having beat the Germans in similarly humiliating and decisive fashion. It was amazing. I was in a pub quite late into the night to watch it, and I was disappointed at the muted reaction to Germany's loss. Maybe this is indicative of declining patriotism. Who knows?
Yeah, could be the case. Could be the case. Now, as you'll know, right, Pooch and his team are having to fight a permanent war against the gremlins that get in and infiltrate the UK live online system, whether that's making sure that Joe's muted or unmuted, that you can hear the guests, that the right slides come up at the right time, the right subtitles, that I'm asked to read out all of the right chats. It's a permanent battle, right? And but he wins it. Basically, he wins eventually, sometimes on penalties, but he always wins the battle against the gremlins. But I have tracked down the worst technical gremlin thing you could imagine getting in to any kind of computer system to do with football. Get this, a massive bar in Paraguay last night. They are watching the penalty shootout. The guy is about to come up for the third time to score the winning penalty for Paraguay. They'd had two other chances. Now there's yet another chance to slot it in. He just needs to score, and Paraguay have probably got their best result in their entire footballing history. What do you think happens? Let's play clip number 7. I would not thank the technical gremlins if that happened while I was watching England in a penalty shootout. Jesus Christ, the tension there, absolutely bloody unbearable. So, Joe, I've got to ask, right, what do you think of England's chances? Who else do you think, if you were going to go with head rather than heart, is your money really on? And then I've got to get a couple of predictions from you. But first, what do you make of England so far? Can we go the whole way, or are we flattering to deceive again? And if not England, who? I'm starting to get a sneaky feeling for Morocco to become the first African nation to win the World Cup. But what's your tip?
The England team is clearly very strong, but as we established earlier, playing really defensively and really boringly. I can only imagine. And look, I'm not one of these armchair football managers who pretends that they know more than Tuchel. It would be an insult to the game to sort of really call me a fan. But I can only imagine playing in a more exciting, attacking way is the sort of only option. But so in terms of chances, you know, I'm a patriotic lad. I always back Britain. So in that sense, I'm sure that they'll go all the way. But that's my heart speaking. You asked about head too. And I'm led to believe that the French and the Argentinians, which again, as a patriotic Englishman, pains me to say, but they seem to be tipped to do extremely well. I think I'm right on that front.
Yeah, alas so, alas so. And then, Joe, one last challenge I have for you. And I forgot to ask Kieran Maguire this, which is probably to my benefit because Kieran knows a lot more about football than I do. But we are running throughout a prediction competition. No money is involved. I'm also running my own betting tips where I'm tanking. But on the prediction competition where there's no money involved, I'm doing pretty well. And each day it's me, Mark Littlewood, against the rest of the world typically being my guests and my wingman, Paul Cox. And we compare whether my predictions are closer to the actual outcome than the guests and Paul's predictions. And I want to be clear here, it is a prediction of what the score will be after 90 minutes. So forget extra time. It's just what the score is after 90 minutes. You can't predict nil, if you predict 0-0 and some team to win on penalties, forget all the extra time and the penalties. So I need the 90-minute score. And from you, Joe, I'm going to need your predictions for Ivory Coast, Norway, and France versus Sweden. You can't have the score I've predicted because it's me against the rest of the world. I go first, and I predicted Ivory Coast 1, Norway 2. So you can't have that. And France 3, Sweden 0. So you can't have those two scores, Ivory 1, Norway 2. Or I think we're dropping the Ivory. There's no elephants there. Coast 1, Norway 2 is my first prediction. France 3, Sweden 0 is my second prediction. Joe, over to you. What are your tips for those matches?
All right, well, I was so entranced by your man giving us that treasure trove of trivia about Ivory Coast. Sorry, Coast, because it doesn't have any more ivory. So I'm going to throw my weight behind the Ivorians, and I'm going to go Coast 3, Norway 2, and France, Sweden, well, it's got to... How about 2 France, 1 Sweden?
Wow, there you go. So the Coastians to win, thanks to what was in Cox's box. Joe, great to have you with us. Look forward to Saints Millwall next season. We'll get you on the show later in the tournament when England are, in the quarters, the semis, or on the eve of the final. Thanks so much, my friend. Let's bring Cox in the box back in to see what he's got in his box about tonight's games. So let's run through what they are, Paul. I mean, some going to match last night's, but 6 o'clock this evening, Ivory Coast, or Coast as we're now calling them, the Coastians versus Norway. Then the French versus the Swedes. So let's pull up slide number 4. That's the Ivory Coast versus Norway. The elephants against the, what's that, an elk or something? Is that what the Norwegian animal is? A moose?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It looks like something like moose or elk or something, doesn't it?
Right. What do we expect from this one then? Look, I've got to say, from that image, the elephant looks much more confident than the Norwegian elk or moose. So what do we reckon for that one? What to look out for? Haaland and Odegaard will be back after disgracefully being rested for what should have been an epic match against the French. They will obviously play today. What are your thoughts? What should we look out for there, Paul?
So, look, with regards to Norway in particular, they got their strongest team back. It's worth pointing out that when that Norway has never won a men's World Cup knockout match, never once, despite producing some world-class players, which we've already mentioned. The country has one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, which we all know about and spoke elsewhere. So they built the North Sea oil revenues and worth well over $1 trillion. But that's not that interesting when compared to Norway's biggest ever World Cup upset, which came in 1998. You may remember this, Mark, and I'm sure our followers do also, when they beat Brazil 2-1 to reach the last 16. And that was before they had the last 32, and they got beat in the last 16. But they did knock out Brazil. So I think that whilst I also believe that it's likely that the Ivory Coast proceed, and my prediction actually for that would be that Ivory Coast win 2-1 against Norway. I think it's going to be tight, and there still is a chance. They've got talisman players, so I think that Norway could produce an upset tonight, but my bet would still be that Ivory Coast win, or Coast as we should now call it forevermore, 2-1.
Yeah. Oh, okay, right. Well, I've got Norway to win 2-1, but that's partly because Haaland is just such a lethal centre forward. In fact, this is worth looking at about Haaland. I think this is in a restaurant in Dallas, and Haaland is this giant Viking of a man, supposedly fearless. But there seems to be only one thing that Haaland is scared of, and that's himself. Check out clip number 4 about Haaland.
Love this.
He doesn't like facing himself down, Haaland. He really doesn't. France, Sweden. Now, I've got something to say about this because I've now taken an even more intense dislike to the French. Let's pull up image number 5 while we preview France versus Sweden. I don't know what the cockerel against, well, what they got, a bun and a Viking helmet on the Swedish team. French look, if you believe the cartoon can predict, that looks like a French win, and obviously France are the big favourites. But I've got a goddamn beef with the French, and particularly their key star talismanic man, Mbappe, because if we pull up image 7, you'll see what Mbappe suggested just the other day. Sports betting is destructive. This is credited to Mbappe. It has ruined the lives of some people I know. That's why I refuse to appear in sports betting advertisements. Many of us come from the suburbs, and it destroys the lives of countless people there. Sod you, Kylian Mbappe. I will bet when I want, however much I want, on anything I goddamn want. And that's why if you pull up image 8, I've decided to vindictively say that Sweden will qualify for the next round, even though I've predicted in the predictions game 3-0, kind of hedging here. Look, I'll wipe out my 172 quid losses pretty much if Sweden qualify by any means for the next round. That can be penalties in 90 minutes, after extra time, whatever. What do you think of my bet, Paul, and what do you think of France versus Sweden?
Well, so much going on there, so much to unpack very quickly of what you've just said. Of course, Mbappe doesn't do betting adverts, but that's not because of his principles and his woke virtue signalling. That's because he's Mbappe and he's got endless adverts to do. If it was Paul Cox playing for the Coast, Ivory Coast, I'd be doing those adverts immediately. I will take the £50,000 that they want to pay me, and I don't care who doesn't benefit from it. So Mbappe can stick his non-betting where the sun doesn't shine, which doesn't happen to be the Ivory Coast because it's always shining there. Before I tell you my prediction on France, I've got a couple of little snippets for you. Sweden reached the 1958 World Cup final, losing to Brazil. Yeah, they lost to Brazil, inspired by a 17-year-old player known as Pelé, which we all remember now. France, of course, unfortunately, two-time World Cup winners, 1998 and 2018. And French call their national team Le Bleu, rather unoriginally because their shirts are blue. Classic French, cannot be bothered. Lazy nickname calling. But I still believe that France will win 2-0. 2-0. I'd love to see Sweden go through. I'd love nothing more than Sweden to go through. And I understand why you put your bet on market. You can carry on with your betting schizophrenia for all you like, and hopefully it will come true.
Yeah, let's hope. I mean, I am a long odds better, and one of the rules is I've got to bet on something that's odds against, right? So, I mean, yes. I could squeeze out a narrow profit by betting on France to score. But, you know, what's the fun in that, Kylian Mbappe? I bloody well ask you. Long odds bet, and I will be cackling tomorrow if that comes through. Look, Mexico, Ecuador. Now, this is, fingers crossed, a game that England should take great interest in. It's in the iconic Azteca Stadium in Mexico. Stunning stadium, capacity of 83,000, deafening home crowd. I'm still got PTSD from losing 2-1 there to Argentina in 1986 with the Maradona cheating hand of God, but then Maradona's second goal, one of the best I've ever seen of all time. Ecuador, of course, beat Germany in the last group game to get through. But it turns out beating Germany is pretty goddamn easy. So I don't know how much you should read into that. Two South American teams have beaten the Germans, or at least one on penalties. What do we make of this, Paul? And in a minute, I'm going to show you why I think Mexico have a pretty key edge.
So here is my analysis on this. My prediction, which I will give up front, unlike I did previously, because this is my prediction. Mexico 1, Ecuador 0. And Mexico have been defensively outstanding in this tournament so far, conceding very few chances and thriving with the home support. Of course, the home teams are doing well. Canada, Mexico, and US are doing pretty well. So that is an extra push behind them. Ecuador are organised and dangerous on the counter, but they've struggled to consistently convert chances despite creating lots of opportunities, a bit like England in many ways. So I am going 1-0. I have a couple of facts if you'd like them, Mark.
Yeah, please. What's in Cox's box? Give us some facts about Mexico or Ecuador.
So Mexico are the only nation to have hosted the Men's World Cup 3 times in 1970, 1986, and 2026, obviously. And of course, we all remember that slightly grainy image with the shadow cast by the stadia over the pitch as both Maradona handles the ball past Peter Shilton and also jinxes his way past several extremely good England players to score one of the best goals of World Cup and including football history. But Ecuador is named after the equator. We all know that. But that is a fact worth mentioning. And the Galapagos Islands belong to Ecuador and famously inspired Charles Darwin's ideas about evolution. So that was the split in the cultural divide back then.
This could be Pro Evo soccer this evening, right? I've got another weird Mexico fact for you there. But you're right, they hosted the World Cup in 1970, possibly the best team of all time, the Brazilian team of Pelé, when they crushed Italy 4-1 in the final. And they're obviously co-hosts of this one. Do you know, Paul, though, why they hosted the tournament in 1986? Just 16 years after they previously hosted it. Usually you need to wait a much longer period of time before you would be considered again. No cheating. Do you know why Mexico hosted it?
There was much political and civil disruption elsewhere, and I cannot remember where, but I know because that was one of my favourite World Cups, my first World Cup. It was very last minute, and it does kind of question why everyone spends trillions of pounds putting on World Cups, because Mexico put that on with just a few months' notice. Because elsewhere, Mark, and you're going to tell us the answer, there was quite some disruption.
Yes, Colombia were the selected hosts, but the drugs war in Colombia was so intense, they decided they couldn't host a football tournament there, and at the last minute reverted to Mexico. Health and safety gone mad, in my view. Health and safety gone mad. But look, here is why you might think Mexico have got an edge this evening. The Mexican fans have tracked down the hotel that the Ecuadorian squad are staying at, and they are making damn sure that the Ecuadorian squad get even less sleep than I do. Let's play clip number 9. These are hardcore fans disrupting the opposition. Clip number 9. Paul, just to warn you, you can expect exactly that treatment when Portsmouth come and stay at the Premier Inn Southampton next season for the derby match at St Mary's. I reckon that is going to give the Mexicans a bit of an edge. What do you think?
I do, and I hate that as well. Disturbed sleep is worse than no sleep. And when you're disturbed, it's so terrible. It really is. It's almost as bad as going to St Mary's and losing against Southampton. Which is something I have seen, and I can tell you something, Mark. Your fans, those Southampton fans, otherwise known colloquially as scummers, are not a good bunch of guys when you're losing to them in their home ground. They are shouting all sorts of words that my mum never taught me, Mark, and I think it's disgusting. That sort of thing would never happen at Fratton Park. We are all gentlemen, and it's all call blimey governor where we're from.
It surprises me not a bit that that your education was lacking in Portsmouth. So I'm very glad to hear that the Southampton fans have kind of brought you up to snuff and taught you everything that you needed to learn later in life. We're always on hand to help those with remedial education needs from Portsmouth FC, Paul. I promise you that. Look, there's another thing I want to say about this, because about the whole tournament, really. Because, look, it is obviously a kind of festival, right? It is a festival of football, and it brings the world together. And this show has even brought Portsmouth Football Club and Southampton Football Club together, for crying out loud. The Middle East peace talks should be easy compared to that. But I still don't think we should be too sentimental about it, and I think you should barrack your team if they underperform. And I don't think that we should just say, it's all the taking part that counts. Let's just have a play of clip number 3 to see if you just think this is too tacky and sentimental about those who have fallen and have already left. That's clip number 3. utter bullshit. It's about winning. It's not about giving your heart. It's about goddamn winning. Did you see the look on the faces of the German team last night?
Absolutely.
And
It is never about taking part.
Schadenfreude we were all experiencing. It's not about giving and taking part. It's about bloody well winning, isn't it, Paul?
And the message behind that was ridiculous, by the way. Tiny dreams and big hearts. What's that got to do with anything? I don't think they had tiny dreams. Very insulting. They had giant-sized dreams, and hopefully their hearts were just normal, regular size. Otherwise, you should see a doctor immediately. But what I will say is it's nothing to do with taking part. This is really the meat and vegetables of things now, right at the cutting edge. You win or you die. It's end of chat, end of competition for you. And you could tell that when Paraguay scored the winning penalty last night, the whole of Germany and the whole of the German fans in that stadium looked absolutely devastated, which is why you and I felt so warm and snuggly inside, Mark. This is about pure rivalry. We don't want anthropomorphizing animals in that way and sad faces and they've got their bag home. No. The World Cup is about football and winning and losing and humiliation.
So let's just remind you before we go, perhaps we can pull up the predictions slide. Paul lobbed in his own, but I got a couple from Joe, because I didn't dare ask Kieran's predictions. He would know more than me. I've gone for Norway to get through. I quite like Norway. I think they're dark horses, but Joe thinks Coast will win. He's tipping the Coastians. I think the French, despite my loathing of Mbappe's anti-gambling stance, will win. But I've still decided that the 8-1 on Sweden getting through by any means is too tasty to not chase my losses despite Mbappe's highfalutin, rather high-minded disapproval. Joe went for 2-1. We both agree Mexico will edge it, possibly due to the fact that the Ecuador players will have had even less sleep than I have over the course of this tournament, thanks to those scenes outside of the hotel. 2-1 to me, 1-0 to Paul. If we get past the Congo, they will be our opponents in the next round in the totally intimidating part. Thanks for clearing up. Japan now clear off. Yeah, okay, we're getting harsh now, aren't we? No fluffy animals, no funny money. Sod your tiny hearts. Sod off back to Tokyo. But we're old school football really on this show, aren't we, Paul? We like it how it used to be, too much commercialism.
Oh, no, the hydration breaks can take a high jump, of course, and that's purely about pure capitalism, which I don't generally have a problem with, but let's leave sport out of it for a second, shall we? We've Americanized the soccer, which I'll never say again on this show. I promise, Mark, I should never say the S word again. But I don't like this Americanization of it. They're great hosts. I like what they're doing, but I wish they'd take the hydration breaks out unless it's incredibly hot. And let's just get back to football. No coloured boots while I'm at it. Black boots, maybe with some white flecks only. Let's change the colour of the football. That should be white or black. Back to the Mitre Delta. Remember the Mitre Delta, Mark? When we were growing up, the Mitre Delta was the ball to end all balls, and it was an incredible ball. Now we've got this colourful thing that you should buy at the beach for your children.
Yep, I'm with you, mate. Old school football all the way. So I reckon that football should take a leaf out of the book of the very early World Cups. So here's a little tribute to play us out, Paul, and thanks for being the Foxy Cox in the box once again. You'll be joining us tomorrow with all your tricks in your box. But let's think back to 1930, the very, very first World Cup in Uruguay. Only 4 European teams competed. They were invited. I think it was France, Belgium, Yugoslavia, and Romania. And there was none of this private jets or air conditioning. They went all the way there, training on the deck of a boat to play us out. Let's have a look at clip number 6. And we'll be back tomorrow with previews, updates, the stats and the facts you need to know. Me, Mark Littlewood, for a World Cup Cuppa tomorrow with Paul Cox back in the box. But have a look at what football used to be back in 1930 in Uruguay. Laters, Tigers.
The first World Cup was held in Uruguay in 1930. To get there, teams had to survive a brutal journey across the ocean. France was one of the few teams brave enough to make the crossing, stepping onto the deck knowing they were about to make history. Below deck, the Romanian team passed the long hours reading newspapers, one of only 4 European teams to make the journey to the first World Cup. Belgium was another of the 4 European nations who answered FIFA's call. Their squad walking the deck, ball in hand, with thousands of miles still ahead. In the dining hall, the Yugoslav squad gathered over coffee, the 4th and final European team to take on the journey to Uruguay. With nearly 2 weeks at sea, players had to stay sharp, turning the deck into a makeshift pitch to keep their legs ready for the matches ahead. The journey wasn't easy. Somewhere in the Atlantic, a storm hit, and the players watched on, knowing the road to the first World Cup wouldn't be a smooth one. After weeks at sea, Montevideo finally came into view, and on the shore, a crowd of Uruguayans gathered to welcome the world to its first World Cup.